Chapter 953. The old man's face instantly darkened. However, he had been around for so many years, and had experienced too many things. With a flash of inspiration, he understood everything in his mind. It seemed that the identities of these two people were still confidential. Even his own son didn't know the truth. Was he planning to let his son gain more experience? Or was it to protect him? Then this kid didn't know anything. And he actually bluffed to scare me. This kid's brain is quite flexible. The old man's brain instantly turned very quickly, and he thought of many things. It had to be said that the old man was quite shrewd. With just one sentence from Zhuo, the old man had almost deduced everything, especially when he connected the dots between Zhuo Changlu and Wu Yuding, who were reincarnated into the mortal world and hadn't used their real identities. He couldn't help but be even more certain. He rolled his eyes and said, "The Sky Surveyor throne is nothing. This kid dares to compete with me. Compared to me, he's nothing." Zhuo was disappointed, but there was still hope. Although this old man wasn't the Sky Surveyor throne, his tone was boundless. It should be known that the #1 expert of the Umno Alliance, the Flood Witch, who was known to be invincible, was only on par with the Sky Surveyor throne. However, this old man was actually disdainful of the Sky Surveyor throne. How strong was he? Although there was a high possibility that he was bragging, no ordinary person would dare to boast to such an extent. It seemed that this old man was definitely not a small old man. He must be an expert, an expert, an expert, an expert. He couldn't help but become more cautious and said, "This junior doesn't dare to ask, 'What is your name?'" "Me." The old man snorted and thought to himself, "My daughter and son-in-law didn't use their real names. If they won't tell this kid, then I won't tell him either." He rolled his eyes and said, "My surname? Why do you care what my surname is? Your life is in my hands, and you're in a precarious situation. How dare you ask about my background? You're quite bold, kid." The old man was also depressed. He wanted to use his murderous aura to scare this kid, but he couldn't muster up any killing intent in his heart. However, looking at her was quite pleasing. He always wanted to spank her. Zhuo's waist was grabbed by the old man and carried in his hand. It was like a person carrying a puppy. It was convenient for him to slap Zhuo's, but it was also a fact that the posture was extremely indecent. Zhuo hastily smiled apologetically. "I was just curious. You don't even put the sky inspecting minister in your eyes. This is your seniority. You must be one of the most powerful people in this world." The old man's face was a little dark as he said indifferently, "The sky patrolling minister is really nothing in front of this old man." He thought to himself, "When he sees me, that brat runs faster than a rabbit. It's hard to even see his face." His original little brother had become his father-in-law. That old bastard still had the nerve to meet him? He remembered the time when they were training together and roaming the Jianghu together. He had called Zhuo. Unfortunately, his wife had died early, leaving behind a daughter who had no one to take care of. Therefore, he had no choice but to thicken his skin and bring his daughter along with the group. At the same time, the brothers would take care of the little girl together. In the end, who would have thought that the bastard would actually take care of her to the bed? Why did I become the demon ancestor in the future? You motherfucker, Elder Zhuo, how could you bear to do that? How could you open your mouth to eat? You fucking incest. Old bastard. Back then, I had already broken down. My daughter kept calling you Uncle Zhuo. Elder Zhuo. You were so sanctimonious. Today, you patted my head. Tomorrow you would praise me. The day after, you would bring me to look for good things and coax my daughter. Back then, I was so grateful that I kept treating you to wine to thank you for taking care of my little girl. Who knew that I would actually thank you so much? Thinking of this matter, he lowered his head and looked at Zhuo. Suddenly he was furious. And now, she had even given birth to a son. Anger rose in his heart. Therefore, he gave Zhuo a good spanking. On his butt. Zhuo was suddenly stunned. What's going on? Didn't we already have a good conversation just now? Why are you spanking my butt all of a sudden? Did I say something wrong? There's nothing wrong with what I said. I said that you must be a big shot. In the end, you turned around and spanked me. Why? Elder, can you put me down first? Xiaoduo felt that his butt had evolved from half a day high to a balloon. Moreover, it was the kind that was very inflated when blown up. However, this made him feel even more fearless. This old man spanked me like an elder spanking his grandson. He was only willing to hit the part with the thickest flesh. I'm definitely not in danger. What I should think of now is how to use my small size to ask for a greeting gift. How can an elder not give a greeting gift when meeting a younger one? A greeting gift must be something good. This is the principle that mother taught me. Put me down. You can't put me down. The old man shook his head repeatedly. This old man was an experienced and wise man. Although he had only known Xiaoduo for a short time, he had already seen through this kid's extremely slippery character. He was impulsive, and his character was even worse. Once he made a move, it was a series of killer moves. He was like a loach in oil, slippery and difficult to deal with. Once he suffered a backlash, death would come abruptly. Such a ruthless character would escape with just a little carelessness. How could he let him go so easily? Xiaoduo watched as the old man dragged him further and further away. He could not help but feel anxious. Where are you taking me? You've spanked my butt for so long. Haven't you gotten your revenge by now? Elder, please be merciful and let me go. I don't know what I've done to offend you. Please tell me, I'll apologize. I'll kowtow to you. Elder, you look so kind and amiable. You can't be a bad person. I've offended you so much, but you didn't want to hurt me. You must be a kind person. You, Elder. Please let me go. I've stored a lot of good wine in the villa. Good cigarettes. Good tea. Good. How can you let me go? I still have a lot of things to do. I'm busy every day. I'm very busy, very busy. There are too many things waiting for me to deal with. If I'm not here for a day, I don't know how many people will lose their jobs. How many people won't have money to buy rice? How many people won't have enough money to eat? And how many people will cry piteously for food? One sentence after another, begging for mercy, flattery, and all kinds of good words were like the rising tide of the sea. It was a pity that the old man in the gray robe turned a deaf ear. Xiaoduo's cultivation was restrained. He couldn't move at all. He could only keep his head, hands, and legs drooping. He was like a defeated dog, carried by the old man by his belt, flying thousands of miles in the sky. He watched as the mountains flew past him at a rapid speed. Xiaoduo didn't stop talking. His mind was racing, but he was anxious and unbearable. This old man, it seems that he won't let me go. More importantly, this old man's cultivation was so high that it was unimaginable. It was so high that it was beyond his knowledge. In this old man's hands, he could do whatever he wanted with him. He couldn't resist at all, and could only accept it passively. This was the most terrible thing. Xiaoduo had always hated situations that were out of his control, let alone his own life and death in the hands of others. His destruction was just a thought away. Even if he was sure that the old man had no intention of taking his life, this uncomfortable feeling still lingered. But it's true that this old man doesn't have any evil intentions. He just carried me like this, and didn't even search my body. If it were someone else who saw the earth hair dryer in Shao, they would definitely search their space rings. But this old man obviously didn't. Xiaoduo sighed in his heart. He should be one of us, but his temper is a little strange. What bad luck. Why did I meet such an old man? Along the way, the dense meteors in the sky fell without interruption, but the old man didn't care at all. He just walked forward like this. The meteors that fell on him, or on the way forward, were all smashed into pieces by the tyrannical protective spiritual energy. Many of them had already shattered before they could even come into contact with the Qi shield. Xiaoduo saw this scene and wisely shut his mouth. This old man is not just strong, he's too strong, too strong. Xiaoduo looked at all the experts he had met in his life, and was shocked to find that this old man's strength was not only beyond his knowledge, but also beyond all the experts he had seen in the world, including Uncle Nan, who had attacked him that time, and even the phantoms of his parents. None of them could match up to this old man's profound and tyrannical cultivation. This old man was indeed the most powerful master he had ever met in his life. Old man, may I ask your name? Xiaoduo asked. My surname is Wu. The old man's face darkened. Well, I'll take my wife's surname for the time being. Look what this Zhuachangchang has done. Your surname is Wu, right? What a coincidence. You have the same surname as my mother. Otherwise, I would feel very close to you when I see you. Then I'll call you Grandpa Wu. Zhou Xiaoduo racked his brains to get close to the old man. The old man tilted his head and thought for a while. He felt that there was nothing wrong with this name, so he nodded and said, At your age, you should call me Grandpa. Zhou Xiaoduo cursed in his heart. You old bastard, you should call me Grandpa. But he said sweetly, Grandpa Wu, I really feel very close to you when I see you. That feeling is very similar to when I see my mother. The old man's heart felt inexplicably comfortable and he said, we're fated. Zhou Xiaofeng's mouth was as sweet as honey. Look at how tired you are carrying me. Put me down and I'll run with you. I won't run away. You're my grandfather. How can I run away? The old man snorted and said, You'll run away one day. All the way to the south, the surrounding temperature began to rise slowly, and then it slowly became cold. Suddenly Zhou Xiaoduo, who had been saying New Year's greetings all the way, suddenly stopped. He was stunned by the scene on the ground in front of him. Chapter 954. Zhou Xiaoduo was high up in the air. He saw rows upon rows of tombstones on the ground, as far as the eye could see. They were neat and tidy, stretching out from front to back and left to right. There was no end in sight. No matter if one looked at it vertically or diagonally, all the tombstones appeared to be in a straight line, extending straight to the other end of the endless horizon. An intense feeling of shock suddenly welled up in his heart. In this forest of tombstones, one could vaguely see scattered figures moving about. They were moving about, burning incense, weeding, drinking, and sitting quietly. There were so many tombstones, and many of them were covered with thick traces of rain and wind. But there wasn't even a single weed growing on the tombstones. Whether it was the brothers who came to sweep the tombstones, or the comrades who stood guard here, they wouldn't allow any weeds to grow on the tombstones of their comrades. Every year, fresh soil would be transported from afar and scattered on the tombstones. In this way, in the eyes of the living, their brothers had just died and their heroic spirits hadn't left. I still haven't forgotten the scene of that year. Their faces are still fresh in my heart. On each tombstone, there was a young face. Some were solemn, some were smiling, some were grinning, some were pulling faces mischievously, some had swollen eyes, some were eating steamed buns with half a steamed bun in their mouths. Looking up and shocked at these frozen faces were all quietly observing the world in front of them. They were quietly accompanying their comrades by their side. There were also some tombstones where men and women were buried together. The pictures on the tombstones were wedding photos of the two parties involved, full of happy smiles as they snuggled up to each other, looking at the world of mortals. In a place far away from Zhou Xiaoduo's line of sight, there was an enormous tombstone that towered into the sky. At a glance, it was at least 300 meters tall. At a glance, it was even more majestic than an ordinary mountain. There were huge black words on it. Success doesn't depend on me. I have no regrets in this life. Neither success nor failure is in the annals of history. I have done my best in this battle. On the other side, there was an entrance and a couplet. The spirits of heroes may enter, but the souls of cowards shall not. Next was a stately building with a courtyard filled with wreaths. There was only one passageway leading to the Hall of Martyrs. Entering the Hall of Martyrs, there were 4 entrances: north, south, east, and west. There were people from the east, south, west, and north legions stationed here at all times to welcome the heroic souls of their respective armies. They each led the heroic souls to reunite with their former comrades. When Zhou Xiaoduo arrived and looked down from above, he could clearly see that the people standing at the entrance were all soldiers in military uniforms. Many of them were holding memorial tablets in their arms and holding urns of ashes, waiting quietly. When it was their turn, they walked up with their brothers to send their brothers to their resting place. If it wasn't his turn, he would just have to wait for as long as he could. No one was allowed to speak or do anything before the brothers were sent to the martyr's palace. She was not allowed to cry or laugh. Even if he had to wait for 10 days or a month, he had to maintain the same posture from beginning to end. When a brother was on a long journey, He had to be allowed to leave peacefully and peacefully. How could he be neglected in the slightest? Inside the martyr's palace, soldiers continuously entered and exited in neat rows to welcome the heroic souls. Both sides faced each other and saluted. Then, they divided into 2 rows of guards to escort the heroic souls into the palace. In the distance, there were still many people holding memorial tablets and solemnly walking over. They were at the very back, quietly lining up. Every day, there were tens of thousands of people here, but no one said a word. The entire place was silent. Apart from the sound of footsteps, there was only extreme silence. There were very few movements. This is. Wuxia's eyes were filled with shock as he witnessed this scene. His heart was instantly filled with solemnity. He felt an inexplicable urge to cry. He felt an indescribable sadness in his heart. He would never be able to see such a scene from the rear. These densely packed tombstones stretched endlessly. How could there only be a few 100 million people? The old man straightened Wuxia and released the restriction on him. Then, he led him into the hall of Martyr's Palace's reception building. They hadn't taken more than a few steps, as if they had made an appointment beforehand. A middle-aged man in military uniform walked out. He had a square face and a solemn expression. His eyes were like a bloodthirsty falcon's. His body trembled when he saw the old man, but he soon saluted him with a straight back. The old man returned the greeting with a solemn expression. He said in a deep voice, "I'll take this little guy to the Martyrs' Temple Cemetery for a stroll." The middle-aged man nodded silently. He didn't say anything and only extended his hand. His meaning was obvious. "Please do as you wish." He then saluted again and turned to leave. He didn't say a single word from start to finish. He can't talk now, can he? Wuxia finally couldn't hold back and asked the question he had been wondering about for a long time. "He can talk." The old man sighed and said, "Many, many years ago, he was the one who loved to talk the most. In the whole team, no one laughed more than he did, and no one talked more than he did. His mouth was full of endless words every day, and his brothers called him a chatterbox. That time, he and his brothers completed a mission." He couldn't hold back the excitement in his heart. After the mission was completed, he chuckled softly and said only one word, "Awesome." But it was that chuckle that alerted the UMNO Alliance and caused the successful infiltration mission to fail on the verge of success. After a chase, all of his brothers died an unnatural death. Instead, he was the one who was sent out by his brothers at the risk of their lives. Since then, he has not spoken a single word. Later on, he applied to be stationed at the Martyr's Palace. There's even less of a need to talk here. The old man sighed. 5,000 years have passed since then. But he hasn't even coughed once. He hasn't even talked in his sleep once. 5,000 years. Wuxia felt a surge of sourness and heat shoot straight to his head. For a moment, he couldn't form a single word. He was speechless for a long time. The old man led Wuxia all the way out of the building. Then, they were already in the middle of an unusually vast cemetery. The ground was flat and smooth like a mirror. On the tombstones, youthful faces slid past his eyes one after another. On the furthest side of the tombstone, there was a woman with a face so beautiful that it could cause the downfall of a nation. She was smiling sweetly on the tombstone. "That's the wife of the heavenly king of the right." The old man sighed softly and walked over to offer an incense stick and a jar of wine. Wuxia was shocked. The wife of the heavenly king of the right. Even such a big shot had fallen. When he took a few steps closer, he saw that there were still words on the tombstone. "My beloved wife, Nian Fenghua's tomb. Don't worry, girl. We'll meet again sooner or later. Don't be petty, I won't marry another." Wuxia's heart felt like it was being pounded by a heavy hammer. The old man sighed softly. "The heavenly king of the right has been single ever since. Because of his marriage, the star-plucking monarch and the others have beaten and scolded him countless times. But every time, he would just cover his head and take the beating without saying a word. As he got older and older, no one urged him anymore. Every year, he would come here and drink quietly a few times. He would come on his wife's birthday, their wedding anniversary, his wife's death anniversary. Don't be fooled by the fact that he doesn't seem to be serious every day. But in fact he's suffering in his heart. The old man sighed softly. Don't think that you won't fall just because you've become a senior. You're all human, and you're all fated. You'll die just like that. There's no need to talk so much about it. The old man sighed. Then he walked to the back and came to another tomb. The tomb of the Sword Emperor Xiao Wuji. Back then, the Sword Emperor and the Saber Spirit shocked the Sun Moon Pass. Back then, it was the same as now. Many people fought with their lives for many years. Some even became friends with their opponents for a long time. Some were even. During that battle, the Sword Emperor Xiao Wuji suddenly felt something. He sent a letter to the Alliance's Heavenly King Ling Yun and invited him for a drink. Heavenly King Ling Yun came alone, and the two of them got drunk. A month later, the Sword Emperor fell into Heavenly King Ling Yun's ambush in order to save his brother who was trapped. In the end, he died in battle. Heavenly King Ling Yun and a few other Alliance's Heavenly Kings personally killed the Sword Emperor and sent his corpse back. They also gifted the Alliance with 1,000 jars of fine wine. 3 days later, Heavenly King Ling Yun of the Alliance suddenly passed away silently in the Alliance's camp. Everyone knew that Heavenly King Ling Yun was injured by the Sword Emperor's final attack and couldn't survive. However, only a few people knew that Heavenly King Ling Yun didn't want to live anymore after the Sword Emperor's death. He didn't want to go to the underworld alone. The old man sighed. He opened a jar of wine and filled 3 cups. 2 cups were placed in front of the tombstone, and 1 cup was held by himself. He said softly, "Brothers, I hope that when you reach the other side, you won't be enemies anymore. Let me give you a toast. I hope that you won't be lonely on the road together." After saying that, he raised his head and downed the cup in 1 gulp. After the fragrance of the wine dissipated from the tombstone, he gently poured the wine in his cup. "Drink more." He then took out a few more jars of wine and poured them down. He sighed softly and said, "Heavenly King Ling Yun of the Alliance was a woman. The Sword Emperor never married, and Heavenly King Ling Yun never married." Xiaodua was enlightened. No wonder the old man had said that he was wondering how the 2 big shots were like. It turned out that they were on different sides, and it was difficult for them to walk side by side on the road together. When he put himself in their shoes, he couldn't help but feel endless bitterness for this pair of lovers. People's feelings never stop because of some kind of enmity or feud. Feelings are often the most difficult thing to control. Once feelings were born, they were naturally the hardest to control. The Sword Emperor and Heavenly King Ling Yun knew each other well because of their enmity. They developed feelings for each other, but they didn't dare to say it out loud. Just like that, they fought for their lives. You had your responsibilities and I had my mission. You couldn't back down, and I couldn't give up. We could only fight until we died. Both of us died. Xiaoduo sighed softly. At the last moment, I'm afraid the Sword Emperor was tired of living. They were tied down and tortured for their entire lives. The old man smiled bitterly. The 2 disciples of the Sword Emperor at that time, one was Dongfang Xingyang, and the other was the Sword Sovereign. Both of them could already hold their own. He sighed, but there was still more to it. Chapter 955. The old man stood up and led Xiaoduo forward. Finally, they arrived in front of a tombstone. This tombstone was obviously different from the previous ones. There were no names or photos on it, only numbers. Demon Monarch of Astral Souls 36-1. From 1 to 36, not a single one was missing. The old man's face darkened visibly. Here, none of his subordinates were left. They were all here. Wine jars flew into the air one by one, and countless wine poured down from the air like a waterfall. "Old brothers, I'm here to see you," the old man said softly. Jars of wine flew out, as if they were following orders. They went to a tombstone opened automatically and poured down on their own. 36 tombstones poured down like a flash flood. The old man sat in front of the tombstone, motionless for a long time with his eyes closed. In the battle that year, the Alliance had a peerless talent like this kid. He secretly sent 4 demon monarchs to kill him in the Alliance. However, this kid was protected by the soul clone of the Ice Abyss Witch. He ordered the Great Witch of the Ice Abyss and the Great Witch of the Raging Fire to attack together, while he led the demon army under his command to provide support. After a round of bitter battle, he finally managed to rescue them with great difficulty. Then, he rejoiced that the Great Witch of the Flood had suddenly appeared, and death was imminent. In that battle, the Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer directly flew over his head and smashed the sun and moon until they lost their light. The heavens and the earth were miserable. 12 of the 36 demon monarchs who participated in the battle died one after another. In the end, when he was also seriously injured and was about to die, the remaining 24 joined forces to surround him and self-destructed. They sacrificed their lives to temporarily trap the Flood Great Witch. Only then did they blast open a way out for him. Until now, sitting in front of the tombstone, he seemed to hear the desperate cries of his 36 brothers. "Boss, let's go. If you don't go, we brothers won't die in peace." In the end, the cluster of mushroom clouds seemed to still be in front of his eyes. 2 streams of tears fell from the old man's eyes. "Flood, oh Flood, I know that you have a long-term vision. What you want is only to improve, only to reach the top. But, even though I know, I can't do as you wish. Because at that time, the first thing we considered was survival, not supremacy. Flood, although you have your reasons, this old man still chooses to be irreconcilable with you. This enmity and hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. In this life, only one of us can survive. My brothers are waiting for me, and they are waiting for you." Zheng zheng. From the old man's ring came the screeching sound of the divine weapon rubbing against the scabbard. It was as if the divine weapon had smelled the scent of blood and could not wait to leave the scabbard and fight again. The old man silently stroked the ring, and the clanging sound of the blade finally disappeared unwillingly. "Don't worry. One day, I'll take you out of the scabbard. We'll kill the Umno Alliance until the sky is red with blood, and we'll kill that bastard Flood," the old man said softly, as if he was comforting a child. His voice was very soft and gentle, but there was a murderous aura in it that was almost tangible. "One day I will be completely at ease and have no scruples. Don't worry, just wait a little longer. It's almost there." The old man turned his head to look at Swordsmanship, and there was a trace of expectation in the depths of his eyes. In his heart he said quietly, "Brothers, don't worry. I'm almost there. Or perhaps Flood is about to accompany you. When my grandson grows up, he doesn't need to reach the peak. As long as he reaches the level of Heavenly King, that will be the time for me to let go of everything and fight the final battle. At that time, I'll fight Flood and avenge you." He stooped down and stood up, bringing Swordsmanship along as he walked forward. In the mausoleum forest, he walked forward with his hands behind his back. His gaze was bleak, and only his aura was faintly visible. He was like an old general in his twilight years, inspecting the mighty army that had followed him through hundreds of battles. Swordsmanship quietly followed behind. He did not know when it started, but he no longer had the intention to run away. The atmosphere here, the solemnity here, made his heart seem to have been sublimated, an unprecedented sublimation. Even his entire soul was purified because of this. Just like that, row after row of tombs he slowly looked over. Those unfamiliar names, those young faces, row after row. Occasionally, when he saw grass, he would casually pull it out. Everything was natural and logical. Occasionally, there would be people walking toward him, and then they would quietly turn aside and make way for each other. The whole process was silent. Gradually, it became the old man who followed behind Swordsmanship blindly. Swordsmanship wandered around the cemetery for 2 days and 2 nights. Finally, the old man said, "Go out. Even if you walk for another 20 years, you may not be able to finish reading." Swordsmanship looked back blankly and looked at the neat tombstones. It seemed that in the past, every hot-blooded warrior was smiling at him and calling his name. Swordsmanship, fight. Fight. Swordsmanship suddenly clenched his fists, condensed his chi in his hands, and showed his fighting spirit. The old man said faintly, "While you are feeling melancholy for the new year, they will no longer have the chance to celebrate the new year. Never." Swordsmanship was silent. Then he felt his body shake, and he rose into the air and quickly left the cemetery. The old man brought Swishaoduo to the cemetery. Throughout the entire process, other than the introduction at the beginning, he didn't say a word and didn't say anything else. What principles, what insights, what thoughts, and so on. He didn't say anything at all. However, Swishaoduo was very clear in his heart, and he was very sure that he had gained a lot from this trip. This gain was spiritual, and spiritual, although it could not be transformed into material, or even cultivation for the time being. The significance was far-reaching. At least for now, he was no longer as impetuous as before. And the incomprehension and disrespect that lingered in his heart before, or rather, he did not understand. Just by looking at this cemetery, he knew where the peace in the rear came from. Swishaoduo even felt that everyone in the rear should come here, to take a look and purify themselves. To purify those who had long been blinded and tarnished by money, fat, power, and beauty. Those who should have been human souls. They should not be as numb and impatient as they were now. It was fine to be materialistic, but one could not ignore where all this came from. Without these continuous tombstones, how could there be such materialistic people today? Only those who had been here, who had seen all this, would be so heartbroken when they returned and saw those numb people. That was why. They felt that it was not worth it for the heroic souls. The next moment the wind whistled. He was already in midair, and the mountains and rivers flashed past. In front of him, there was a majestic pass that could be said to be a magnificent spectacle. Ever since Swishaoduo became sensible and had memories, the word Sun Moon Pass had been deeply ingrained in his heart and imprinted in his mind. In these years when he was in school, there were too many traces of the word Sun Moon Pass in every book he read. There were countless touching stories that were familiar to him, and the names of countless heroes were connected to these three words. However, this was Swishaoduo's first time seeing the legendary Sun Moon Pass, but he knew what it was at first glance. This was the Sun Moon Pass. This must be the Sun Moon Pass. In the whole world, only this place was worthy of this name. He saw a continuous and endless pass, which was at least 100 feet high, standing tall on the mountain ridge. Its entire body exuded a kind of color like that of an antique that was being played with. It spanned between heaven and earth, and one could not see the end of it. It could be said to be the Great Wall, but it was not, because it was very wide and could accommodate countless people. Rather than the Great Wall, it was more like a huge city that was tens of thousands of meters wide and millions of miles long. This was the Sun Moon Pass. This was the legendary Sun Moon City. In front of the pass, there was still a bloody battle. And there was not only one place where there was a bloody battle. In front of the pass, there were lofty mountains and steep ridges and endless ravines. The terrain was extremely complicated and difficult to recognize. Even the entire area in front of the pass, on the boundless land, was almost the same color as the walls of the Sun Moon Pass. As a martial artist, Swishaoduo didn't even need to get too close to recognize that it was the color of dried blood with a single glance. He did not know how much blood was needed to dye such a color. It could only be that kind of batch after batch, generation after generation. The blood in front dried, and the blood in the back splashed again. The blood kept splashing, drying and cleaning. In the end, it could no longer be cleaned, and the heavy feeling of time could no longer be washed away. How much blood is needed? Swishaoduo looked at the outside of the pass. As far as his eyes could see, thousands of miles were filled with this color. He could not help but feel shocked. The old man stood in the air, looking at the vast land, and said coldly, "What you can see now, and what you can't see, are all battlefields that have lasted for countless years. Ever since the Sun Moon Pass was connected by the heroic spirits of the stars and solidified, no matter if it was the city walls or the battlefield over there, the complete landscape is indestructible. Today, one must at least be a grand magus, or at least a heavenly king, to be able to stir up a storm in this area. Ordinary sky-soaring realm martial artists, when fighting here, even the slightest bit of dust would not be able to splatter. Every day, even when the war is at its most peaceful, there are tens of thousands of martial artists fighting each other on this battlefield, and they will not rest until one of them is dead. The assassins and hunters of the various armies roam this area. Actually, there are only 3 outcomes when you discover the enemy. You can either be killed, or perish together. Basically, there is no such thing as mutual destruction and retreat. Life in this place. The old man pointed with his finger, and everything in front of him was included. He said indifferently, just like dust. Chapter 956. I brought you here today to show you this graveyard and this battlefield. This land cannot be destroyed, but the people who come here are constantly being destroyed, killed. Lives can be destroyed continuously, but the battlefield, even if it's just a rock connected to a mountain, has not changed or moved for tens of thousands of years. As more and more people die, countless heroic souls live and merge into this land bit by bit, causing the foundation of this land to become more and more indestructible. Even if the Star Spirit continent collapses, it will be difficult for this land to be destroyed. It will exist independently. Fighting here is already an obsession for the warriors of the Umno Alliance and the astral souls. They don't want to live, they want to die, the old man said. However, according to too many rumors, the higher-ups of the Umno Alliance and the astral souls, who have reached the Heavenly King realm or above, have a good personal relationship. Swordsmanship said, if that's the case, can I understand? The heroic souls who die on this battlefield every day, every year are not worth it? After all, they are bleeding and sacrificing here. But the higher-ups of their own and the enemy are probably sitting somewhere, drinking tea and chatting, or even drinking wine. The old man said calmly, this situation is not a rumor, but a reality. Not only that, when the higher-ups of both sides confirm that there is something that they can't solve, they will ask the higher-ups of the other side for help. Once they ask, the other side rarely refuses. These are all very normal things. After so many years of fighting, as long as they go to war, they are mortal enemies. Every pair can be said to be close friends to a certain extent. As the old saying goes, the person who understands you the most is never your friend, but your enemy. Isn't that reasonable? But even if they help each other, it's not a big deal, and it's not a compromise or betrayal. On the contrary, the person involved will feel honored. Whenever they encounter such a situation, they will gather their subordinates and solemnly announce that a certain person has asked them to do something for him. Then, everyone will laugh and be very happy. The whole process seemed to be a very glorious and brilliant thing. And in fact, it is indeed very glorious and outstanding. It is not something that any high-ranking general can obtain the respect and request of the other party. However, this friendship will definitely not extend to the battlefield. Once on the battlefield, as long as there is an opportunity to kill the other party, everyone will go all out and grasp the opportunity that is hard to come by. As for the soldiers who died in battle, who would feel wronged, it won't happen. The feelings between soldiers, enemies, or opponents are incomprehensible to most people. If this were to be brought up to the rear, there would definitely be a bunch of people who would say, so many people are fighting for their lives, but at the end of the day, you guys are actually playing a game. That's just bullshit. It stinks. Just like what happened in the past, there was a high-ranking official here who doted on 2 young ladies. They needed to go to the Umno Alliance to gain some experience and gain some things. General Dongfang directly asked the Heavenly King of the opposing side to take care of the 2 young ladies on my side. They want to go to your side to play. At that time, the Heavenly King agreed without hesitation. He transferred some elites from the military to protect them and gave a strict order. This is my honor, I can't lose it. If anything happens to the 2 young ladies, you don't have to come back. I can't explain it to Dongfang Zhenyang either. The old man said calmly. The whole thing is so simple. However, if the people behind the scenes saw the whole thing, they would say that Dongfang Zhenyang colluded with the enemy, and that the Heavenly King of the Umno Alliance forgot about his own family. There are many boundaries that are difficult to explain clearly at certain times and certain stages. The juniors of the Umno Alliance, especially those who are not talented in martial arts, come to our land of astral souls to play. Most of them are protected by our military. As long as they don't do anything excessive, They will definitely come and go safely. Of course, this must be explained clearly in advance, in order to ensure their safety. Otherwise, I'm afraid that these two tender little girls will turn into a pile of minced meat the moment they step out of the Sun-Moon Pass. If the juniors of the high-ranking officials here lack something in their cultivation, or need something to strengthen their cultivation, they will rarely refuse to do it. It's the same for the other side. Even though they know that these things will improve the talents of the other side, and may become an opponent in the future. As long as you mention it, they will do it for you. This is mutual respect, a respect that is hard to understand. I'm afraid that you won't mention it, When you truly reach this step, when you truly set foot on this battlefield and experience the slaughter here, you will understand. Many things can't be explained clearly and can't be understood. As for this battlefield, the Sun-Moon Fortress will always be the Sun-Moon Fortress. However, for the Umno Alliance and the Astral Souls, there is a concept that has been instilled in the hearts of the soldiers. That is, this place is a place to cultivate venomous insects. No matter if it's a heavenly king, a marshal, or anyone else, as long as they can reach a high position, they must fight their way out here. Only by fighting their way out can they achieve a glorious position. Countless soldiers are hoping that they can be the one to fight their way out of the battlefield. Or, their brothers can be the one who fights their way out. Every time before entering the battlefield, countless warriors will encourage each other. If I'm destined to die, I hope that I can be the stepping stone for my brothers. The elder patted Wuxia's shoulder. When you really enter the battlefield, you will realize that the so-called worry of life and death has no room for consideration. It doesn't even exist. As long as you reach the Sun-Moon Fortress, every warrior you see will be happy. Because for them, every day is a gain. The most common sentence that the soldiers here say is, the elder's face turned solemn. He said softly, for the rest of your life, every minute is a gain. What unwillingness! What unworthy! These are things that only narrow-minded people would think about. These are strange things that only appear in the works of those pedantic scholars. The real heroes who face life and death on the battlefield don't have the time to think about these trivial things. Whenever they have a bit of free time, they will sweep the graves of their brothers, visit their families, or gather together to gamble, sleep, or get drunk. There are also those who are especially energetic when they are not injured on the battlefield. After the battle, they can even call a group of people to fight among themselves. The elder smiled as he said this. Suddenly, he took out 2 sets of military uniforms and put them on for himself and Zhuo. Then he straightened his back. Suddenly, Zhuo magically found that the elder suddenly looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. It was even more exaggerated than turning into a living person. Since you're here today, I might as well show you how the people here talk, and how they live their lives. I'll show you a real place where men live. As he said this, he took Zhuo and landed in the Sun-Moon Fortress. They set foot on this land. Zhuo was surprised to find that this place actually had everything that one could possibly want. Or it should be said that as long as there was something in the inland, there was everything here. There were all kinds of shops, all kinds of businesses, all kinds of food. There was a dazzling lineup. Everything. Looking carefully, many of the shops were run by ordinary people. But those who were buying things or strolling on the streets were all warriors. Some of them were in neat military uniforms, and some of them were ruffians. They wore their hats askew, and their lapels were open. In the cold weather, the tufts of thick black chest hair on their chests were exposed. They walked with their feet splayed out and spoke loudly and fiercely, as if they were afraid that others would not know that they were military ruffians. The elder took Zhuo and walked toward a warrior who was dressed neatly in military uniform. That person walked straight toward them without dodging. His whole body was overflowing with a valiant aura. The elder smiled and said, "Brother, I'd like to ask for directions." "Dog money. What do you want to ask me for?" This person opened his mouth and said something that could lead to a decisive battle in the rear. His nose was still up in the air. "If you have anything to say, just say it." Zhuo was stunned. How could he be so rude? Based on Zhuo's judgment of the elder's cultivation, he did not even need to move. He could kill the person in front of him with just a glance or a breath. The elder scolded. Dog money. Where are the 3 generals and 2 battalions of the Blood Soul Army? I can't find a fucking coin when I come back this time. If you go that way, you'll see a fucking big rock when you turn around. There's a big flag in the yard where the 2 donkey-like guys are standing guard. If you see that, you'll fucking turn right and keep walking. You'll reach the Blood Soul Army's battalions after walking for about 20 miles. Go there and ask. Why is it so troublesome? Don't go there if you think it's troublesome. Do you have anything else to do? No, where the hell are you going? Fuck, I'm going to buy a pack of cigarettes. Cigarettes from my hometown are hard to buy here. This fucking tobacco company is really fucking damned. I can't even buy the cigarettes I want to smoke. Don't go. Leave your name before you go. Are you going to visit my grave? You want to ask for my name? I don't need it. Go and find your fucking battalions. The burly man walked away. The elder turned to Zhuoxiaoduo. Did you hear that? Do you understand? Zhuoxiaoduo was dumbfounded. You're so good-tempered. It's as if this guy can't speak when he's not swearing. Is this the Sun Moon Pass? The elder snorted. I've never seen anyone who hasn't cursed in the past tens of thousands of years on the battlefield who hasn't cursed. This is still considered light. Some of them can curse 7 or 8 fucking times with just one sentence. Zhuoxiaoduo was speechless. This seemed to be very different from what he knew. This was completely different from what he saw in the movies and TV series. This place was truly clean. In the entire Sun Moon Pass, it could be said that there was no rubbish or dust to be seen in any nook or cranny. Not even a single cigarette, but could be seen. After visiting a few tents, the various military supplies were as spotless as they were in the movies and TV series. They were as clean as tofu. Everyone in the camp looked like human beings. Occasionally, they would talk to each other, but it was just a few harmless words. But once they left the sight of the officers, that these guys were simply unrestrained to the point of sensationalism. They would go out and start a fight without saying a word. Then, it would slowly develop to the point where their fellow villagers would join in, and it would evolve into a big group fight, where the gangs would shake each other. There were also those who deliberately looked for trouble to vent their usual dissatisfaction, and to ask for a fight. For example, come out, I've long found you an eyesore. This couldn't be called a reason at all. When one side called out the name, the other side had already jumped out with a ferocious face. Anyway, everyone's temper wasn't good. As long as someone was looking for trouble, there was basically no possibility of not fighting. They even saw 2 seriously injured people lying there with blood all over their bodies. They were still cursing at each other. Their curses were endless, and their spittle was flying everywhere. Their 18 generations of ancestors were all unscrupulously pulled out and scolded. They didn't have the slightest intention of avoiding taboo. Looking at the resentment, if it weren't for the fact that they were seriously injured and couldn't move, these 2 people would definitely fight until their brains were splattered. The people beside them didn't try to persuade them. They all hugged their arms and watched the show. They played poker when they should, gambled when they should, bet when they should, and did whatever they should, as if nothing had happened around them. Zhuoxiaoduo listened for a long time and finally understood. One of the 2 people was ambushed, and the other risked his life to save him. Then both of them were seriously injured, but at least they were still alive. However, the other brothers who were on the mission with them were all sacrificed. And this was the crux of the complaint of the 2 people. One scolded, "Stupid pig! It was such an obvious trap, and you stepped into it like an idiot. If you want to die, can't you not drag others down with you?" The other scolded back, "Who asked you to save me? Who cares if you save me? I've lived long enough. I don't want to live anymore. I've wanted to die for a long time. Fuck, you dragged our brothers down with you. You're a pig. Don't you know strategy?" The more the 2 scolded, the angrier they became. However, as the people around them whispered, Zhuoxiaoduo understood everything. The so-called accidental stepping into the trap was not due to carelessness. It was because the battle situation had reached that point. For the sake of the overall battle situation, they had to give up on part of it. However, the 2 of them kept scolding each other, And they didn't stop at all. Wuxia's only thought at that moment was, what's there to argue about? What's there to scold? You're uncomfortable, you're unhappy. But I'm even more unhappy. The only result of this is that everyone will be unhappy. Even their spittle will be wasted. Why bother? While they were making a fuss, they suddenly saw a person with a murderous aura descend from the sky. He said angrily, is there anyone from Dongshan who's still alive? We were beaten up by people from Western Sichuan. There are so many of them. I can't take this lying down. If there's anyone from Dongshan who's still breathing, come with me. With a loud bang, 7 or 8 people in the room stood up. A group of people in the room next door was also howling. People from Western Sichuan dare to beat up people from Dongshan? They're rebelling. Brothers, get your weapons. If you have the guts, come with me. Then, he saw a group of old military ruffians swarming into the sky with sabers and swords. This. Wuxia's eyelids twitched. Is this the military camp of my dreams? Is this the military camp in TV shows and movies that is clean and tidy, polite and calm? Is this the heroes in TV shows who have serious faces and are full of righteousness? The entire camp I see is filled with demons and demons. Everywhere is filled with demons. Look at those officers who are strolling around and pretending not to see anything. Wuxia's brain was about to explode. As the saying went, seeing is believing. Now that he heard it and saw it with his own eyes, it was really. This is the real military camp. The reality of the military camp is indescribable. The old man patted Wuxia's shoulder. Actually, you just have to think about it. These guys have been here for many years. Every day, if they're not looking at each other, they're looking at their enemies. They're either cultivating, fighting, or taking short breaks. Life is so boring that it's like a pool of stagnant water repeating itself. Moreover, they're constantly facing death and accepting sacrifice. How do you vent this pressure? How do you get rid of the fear of death? How do you squander your exuberant energy? Even if you train and cultivate with your life on the line every day, there will always be times when you're free. When your mind is empty, it's inevitable that you'll miss home, women, children, and parents. However, you can't go back. You still have to face the war here all the time. Whenever you think about it, you'll have the urge to die and cry. How can you not want to vent it? But how do you vent it? The simplest and most direct way is to torture each other. Just fight. Anyway, everyone can fight each other. As long as no one dies, they can still improve their combat power through actual combat. The old man chuckled. He looked at the group of guys outside who were beaten to a pulp. The group of military ruffians who were fighting fiercely in the sky. There was only deep heartache in his eyes. When they spoke, it seemed that they wouldn't open their mouths if they didn't curse. If they didn't agree with each other, they would draw their swords and start a fight. Even a glance could trigger a large-scale armed fight. No matter whether you were in the right or not, if you won, everyone would claim credit for you. If you lost, you would continue to be beaten. Everyone would swarm up and start to beat you up. You actually lost when you went out to fight. You've embarrassed us, brothers. After the brothers beat you up, the senior officer would beat you up again. You actually lost. You've embarrassed me. Often, when you were sleeping at night, there would be a sudden bang. The upper and lower bunks would fight because of a fart from the upper bunk. In an instant, everyone would be thrown off their feet, and the bed would be smashed into pieces. Then, it would develop to the point where everyone in the room would join in the fight. Following that, the people in the next room would also join in the fight angrily. Everyone was a martial artist, and all of them were high-level martial artists. How could the commotion caused by people like them be small? After a battle, the camp would be directly destroyed. It would be a scene of devastation. The so-called punishment was nothing more than deducting everyone's wages to repair the camp. It was said that some unlucky fellows actually didn't get paid for 200 years. They either borrowed money every day, or went around freeloading on cigarettes, alcohol, and food. Their skin was already as thick as the city walls. The old man took Wuxia to 3 military camps. The situation was basically the same. There was no difference. Look at the surprise in your eyes. Have you been fooled by the television? If a martial artist who is ready to fight at the sun and moon pass, and is ready to die at any time, can still be so well-behaved and follow the rules. It's simply unrealistic. If there's really someone who's so well-dressed and courteous to talk to you, then they're either trying to cheat you or want to borrow some money or cultivation resources from you. The old man said, and this kind of borrowing, 99% of the time, it's not repaid. The IOU will be written as it should be. No matter how big the IOU is, there will still be people who dare to sign it. But the problem is that they don't even know if they will be alive tomorrow. Can you, the creditor, still be alive tomorrow? How do you collect the debts of the dead? How do you pay back the debts of the dead? As for the so-called military theme in the movies and TV series, I suspect that those scriptwriters have never been in the military at all. They're just a bunch of greedy people who rely on fantasy men to play word games to cheat money. Wuxia's face turned cold. As a greedy and stingy person, he subconsciously thought of his debtors. It seemed that maybe they were also going to the battlefield. If they came here, would they also become such people? Fuck. Those guys must be trying to renege on their debts. Even if they are a scholarly scholar, as long as they come to the Sun and Moon Pass, they will be successfully transformed in less than a day. They will be transformed into a rough man who is full of vulgarities, eats meat, and can hold a steamed bun with his hands as soon as his toenails are done. Because if they hesitate for a few seconds, they won't be able to eat anything. The people of the UMNO Alliance are looking forward to going to the battlefield. And so are our people. Because we can get loot if we kill the enemy. But the problem is, these guys on both sides are a bunch of poor bastards. There was once a group of people who wiped out the enemy. They seemed to have a lot of loot. There were more than 700 space rings. But there was nothing in the space rings except weapons. They couldn't even find a piece of low-grade jade of astral souls. Wuxia couldn't help but sigh, and said, there are a lot of supplies in the rear. Why didn't they get more and give them to the soldiers to stimulate their cultivation? It's not good to improve their cultivation. A lot. The old man smiled bitterly. Do you know how many people there are in the Sun and Moon Pass? The number of warriors participating in the war here has already exceeded 200 million. Even if it's just low-grade jade of astral souls, one piece per person, it will still cost 200 million. As for low-grade star soul jade, what use would it be to such high-level martial artists? There is no way to distribute it equally. There's not even the slightest chance of that. Of course there are resources, including the donations from the rear, the allocation from the military, and the continuous mining of mines. There are a lot of resources, but it's still far from enough to meet the needs of the front line. There are even a lot of cultivation resources in the storehouses of the various combat troops, but they don't dare to take them out. They can only store them and give them as rewards. Because once the exits are opened and all the warehouses are open to use, the so-called reserves will be used up in no more than 1 year. By then, I'm afraid that we won't even be able to provide rewards and salaries for the soldiers. This is the current situation. This is the reality of the military camp, the real military camp. There are a lot of resources in the rear, but the resources in the rear belong to the rear. They can't be confused with the resources in the front. The resources in the rear not only have to satisfy the needs of the people, but also have to cultivate the future talents. The front line can only be maintained like this. After all, the current situation of the war has become a model where generations of people are passing on the torch. The old man's mood gradually became gloomy as he spoke. Chapter 957. Wuxia coughed. All of a sudden, he felt that the many cultivation resources in his ring were a bit of a burden. If it was in the past, he would never have such a feeling. However, after coming here and seeing the endless cemetery and the warriors who lived and died here, Wuxia suddenly had such a feeling. Keep your thoughts to yourself. The old man was experienced in worldly affairs and was constantly paying attention to Wuxia. How could he not know that Wuxia had other thoughts? He said indifferently, "These people are all arrogant to death. They will only use battle merits to obtain resources, because that is where the greatest glory lies. It is more important than anything else, and cannot be replaced. Even if you give it to them for free, they will only hand it over, and then use their military exploits to exchange for it. No one will accept gifts from the outside, even if it is extremely precious or resources that they urgently need but can't get. Because too many of their brothers have died here. If they get it because they only care about their own interests, they will inevitably share the high-quality resources with other brothers. If they don't get it and die, they will only feel more guilty and sad. They will only think that it is their fault. Therefore, everyone uses their military exploits to exchange for rewards. They use their own strength to speak. If they are qualified, they will take it. If they are not qualified, they will not take it. It is the same even if they hand it over from their own hands. This is a kind of pride. And this kind of pride is something that the people in the rear will never understand. The old man's interest was waning as he spoke. He sighed and led Swishaoduo outside. Boy, it is hard, tiring, miserable and painful here. But this is the place where real men stay. If you want to be a real man, there is no harm in staying here for a few years. Of course, you have to bet your life. Many warriors who come here go back to the rear because of injuries. But after a few years, they come back again. Some even bring their families back. They do business here not because they can't do business in the mainland, but they don't like the environment and atmosphere in the rear. This is the charm of the military camp. Not many men can resist it. Come early, Swishaoduo said. Grandpa Wu, from what you said, it sounds like you have quite a high status. You used to be a general? A general of a higher rank than the marshal of the Four Directions? The old man came in and out of the barracks, as if he were strolling through a market. The officer who had been silent for thousands of years in front of him made Swishaoduo think of many things. He was now certain that this old man's identity was definitely not simple at all. The old man snorted and turned around to show him a sign on his chest. He didn't know when, but a sign had appeared on his chest, patrol. Swishaoduo was dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. Was that even possible? As long as you hang up this sign, you'll be invisible to all of the military camps. The so-called patrol is actually a free tour of the military camps. You'll get to experience the atmosphere of the military camps and the reality of the military camps. What's there to patrol in such a lousy place? We can't do anything about fighting or quarreling. We might as well do something about it. The old man obviously had some opinions about the effectiveness of this brand. He actually criticized it for a long time. Swishaoduo coughed dryly. So that was the case. Patrol. But even if it was a patrol, it wasn't something that anyone could have, right? Are you done looking? Do you want to continue looking? The old man suddenly asked with a benevolent expression. I'm done. Swishaoduo nodded. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. After all, the old man's attitude changed a little too quickly. Since you've finished watching, I presume that your state of mind has become much calmer. Then it's time to do some proper business. It's time to work. The old man grabbed the back of Swishaoduo's neck and lifted him into the air as he hurriedly left. Swishaoduo was lifted into the air like a salted fish, but he didn't feel out of place. It was probably because this action was too familiar to him. It seemed that his mother had this problem. Later, Nian Cat also inherited his mother's legacy and learned this skill. But this old man, how could he be so familiar with it? Swishaoduo was stunned for a moment before he shouted, Let me down, I'll walk by myself. Whoosh! The two of them flew out like sharp arrows. They flew all the way out of the Sun-Moon Pass, over the battlefield where the two armies were fighting, over the continuous mountains on the side of the Umno Alliance, and all the way into the interior of the Umno Alliance. Swishaoduo was confused. This old man didn't look like he wanted to harm him. But why did he do this now? Why did he go straight into the interior of the Umno Alliance? After a long time, the old man carried Swishaoduo far away from the Sun-Moon Pass. He went all the way into the interior of the Umno Alliance, and stopped in the air above the interior of the Umno Alliance. Boy, the old man sighed and said, I really didn't want to do this to you, but I had to do it. I had to do it. Son, you must understand me. Swishaoduo felt more and more threatened. You. Grandpa Wu, what are you doing? Don't joke around. The old man sighed. Your father and I are old friends. We used to be good friends. I really shouldn't do this to you. Then let me go. You said it yourself, we're old friends. Your father and I are friends. Today, I'm taking you to calm your mind and visit the Sun Moon Pass. I'm helping him cultivate you. So our brotherhood is written off. The old man's words were full of disappointment, and his tone was even more disappointed. But Xiaoduo was getting more and more scared. He could tell that the old man wasn't talking nonsense. Every word he said seemed to come from the bottom of his heart. That sense of sorrow and disappointment. Even if it was someone who was good at acting, it was impossible for them to fake it. How could their relationship be written off just like that? It couldn't be written off. Couldn't it be written off at another time? Xiaoduo couldn't help but complain in his heart. My old man, where did you come from? How could you offend such a powerful person? Uncle Wu and Uncle Nan used to be the top people in the world. But this man in front of me is probably 2 or 3 steps higher, right? You've got yourself into a big trouble. You've got yourself into trouble, but you've made your son suffer. But it's a little scary when I think about it. This old man and my old man used to be brothers? People say that powerful people have powerful friends. Doesn't that mean that my old man is powerful too? At least he's not worse than this old man. But it's not the time to think about it now. I have to figure it out later. Old Zwa, you're so powerful but you didn't tell me. You've made my son suffer. However, the hatred between your father and I is something that I will never forget in my entire life. The old man took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. That bastard of a father of yours. He harmed my daughter. Xiaoduo felt a chill down his spine. Damn it. It turned out that his father had actually killed their daughter. This was not an ordinary hatred. No wonder he said it's unforgettable in this life. It's also unforgettable for anyone. I won't make it difficult for you, and I won't kill you. But if you want to continue living then, you have to fight your way back from this boundary. The old man said lightly. If you can fight your way back, you're tough enough. But if you can't, you'll die here. That's your fate. I only have one request, or rather a restriction. You have to fight your way back step by step. And you can't fly more than 100 kilometers each time. During your return journey, I'll watch you from the sky and monitor you. If you cross the line, I won't beat you or scold you. I'll just throw you back to where you started. Xiaoduo was even more confused. What? What does this mean? I'm doing this because I care about our past relationship. I don't have the heart to go too far. The old man snorted and said, I won't kill you, but I won't help you either. I'll only monitor you. If you die, I'll collect your body so that your soul can return to its hometown. If you're lucky enough to survive, all the hatred will be written off. I'll also help your father train his son. After this long-distance battle, your cultivation and combat experience will increase to a considerable level. If you die, there will be no hatred or resentment between us. We'll write off everything. If you survive, your family's debt to this old man will be even greater. The old man's face was unprecedentedly calm. Every word was sonorous and firm. Xiaoduo's heart stopped. His heart had already turned cold. What was there to think about? This old man had already made his words clear and thorough. He had reached the end of the road. To put it bluntly, he was originally a good friend. But later, for some reason, he harmed the other party's daughter and developed a grudge. But he couldn't let go of the past relationship. But he had to avenge his daughter, that this old man with such a contradictory mentality wanted to settle the past grudges. That's all. This feeling seemed to be quite complicated, but it was actually very easy to understand. I won't kill you, but I'll throw you, the son of my enemy, into a wolf's den. If you can fight your way out of the den, that's your ability and luck. But if you're eaten by the wolf, that's my revenge, and my wish will be fulfilled. How simple. As long as I use empathy to deduce, everything will be clear. However, such a simple thing that can be easily understood, can it not happen to me? I'm very innocent, okay? Xiaoduo said pitifully. What does the grudges of the older generation have to do with me? Grandpa Wu, I'm still a child. The old man's face suddenly twitched. Suddenly, his palm felt a little itchy again. He began to miss the round and thick feeling of someone's buttocks just now. Still a child, This sentence I often hear. But this old man has lived for so many years. I'm almost a living fossil. This is the first time I've heard someone call himself that. That can't be helped. The old man nodded and said, "Who asked me to care about our relationship and not want to hit your father? I'm only left with the ability to bully a child like you. Let's discuss it again." Discuss what? This is a serious matter. We have to think about it at length. There's no need to think about it. Let's think about it again. Let's see if there's a way to get the best of both worlds. Old man, you've actually only lost a daughter. How about this? When I get married in the future, I'll give birth to a daughter and let her be your goddaughter. I'll also give you a daughter. This way we'll be relatives. We can even bury the hatchet. You can still enjoy the happiness of a family reunion. Xiaoduo desperately racked his brain, trying to think of a way to save himself. But when he said this, the old man suddenly flew into a rage. Go down. Get lost. With a shake of his hand, Xiaoduo fell from the clouds. Chapter 958. Xiaoduo was complaining in his heart. This old thing is really unreasonable. My idea is so good. It's obviously a win-win situation. Why did he have to disagree with me? You're throwing me down like this. I'm really going to suffer because of you. Below him, he could vaguely see a huge mountain. Damn it, this mountain. Looks like it's a monster. Xiaoduo knew that this was the interior of the Alliance. Although he was caught off guard when he fell from the sky, he didn't even make a sound. Now is not the time for me to scream. Compared to the fear in his heart, his life is more important. It's too dangerous. If I'm not careful, I'll be done for. Xiaoduo suddenly gathered all the spiritual energy in his body and tried his best to land more gracefully, quietly, nimbly, and stealthily. Xiaoduo's heart was full of resentment. I'm still a child. Why are you doing this to me? Too cruel. The moment Xiaoduo landed on the ground again, he had already planned it out. He already had a plan in mind. While he was in midair, he looked around and took in the surrounding landscape. He was currently in the border of a mountain forest. The moment he landed, he was like a feather. Not only did he land silently, but he also rushed to the middle of a few trees that he had already identified. His old comrade, the heavenly witch copper shovel, was the first thing he did. Poof! With a shovel, a large piece of soil was removed from its original position. Xiaoduo jumped down with a poof. With the flaming sun scripture in full force, Xiaoduo used his scorching heat to instantly evaporate the soil. He then dug a hole in the ground and disappeared in the blink of an eye. He had already moved more than 10 meters away. Even the tunnel that he had dug at the beginning was filled up with soil and stones. There were very few traces left behind. This set of movements was as smooth as flowing water. It was indescribably smooth and untraceable. Xiaoduo could clearly see that there was a troop of Alliance troops nearby. Naturally, he didn't dare to be negligent. Right now, they were in the core area of the enemy's camp. The slightest bit of carelessness could lead to disaster. Of course, they had to use all their skills. Safety was the most important thing, and his life was more important. As for my grand and noble image, there's no harm in ignoring it for the time being. After Xiaoduo escaped safely into the ground, he continued to dig for thousands of feet. The direction of his advance was random and disorderly, but he was at least deep into the ground. It was only when he entered the Tower of Annihilation that he felt a little safer. His pounding heart finally calmed down a little. I have just escaped from the tiger's den. However, he was still in a perilous situation. After all, the old man's cultivation and strength were too high. His eyesight and knowledge were several times better than others. Xiaoduo dared to say that the old man must have seen a space treasure like the Tower of Annihilation. He could even tell that the Tower of Annihilation was not an ordinary item at a glance. At most, he wouldn't have thought that there were other special treasures like the Earth Vein and Dragon Vein in the tower. If he wanted to appreciate it, or wanted to increase the difficulty for himself by taking the tower away, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. This was the main reason why Xiaoduo didn't dare to reveal his trump card, the Tower of Annihilation. This was his life-saving measure. If it doesn't work, I'll find a place to cultivate for 100 or 2 years. I'll let you spy on me. High up in the sky, the old man watched Swishaoduo descend and even land on the ground. He couldn't help but nod secretly. He secretly thought that in the current situation, even if he were in Swishaoduo's shoes, he could at most do the same in order to minimize his movements and avoid being discovered by the enemy. Although he saw that Swishaoduo handled the situation well and was above his expectations, the old man didn't dare to relax at all. He quietly transformed into a faint cloud and floated in the sky. No matter how ruthless his words were, his real intention was still to train this kid so that he could adapt to the environment of the battlefield as soon as possible and improve his strength as soon as possible. But no matter what, he couldn't allow any accidents to happen. If something really happened to Swishaoduo, it would be easy to deal with Mr. Zwa, but it would be impossible to get past his daughter. If it really came to that, the old man felt that he had no other choice but to hang himself. Therefore, he had to protect him well. Along the way, the pressure he was under was far greater than Swishaoduo. It could even be said that the pressure he was under was more than 100 times greater, and he had to concentrate 100 times more. But this was for his grandson. No matter how tired the old man felt, he had to endure it. He had brought this out of his own initiative and caused this matter, so he had to deal with it completely. He couldn't allow any accidents to happen. Nothing must happen. Of course, the old man had absolute confidence in dealing with this matter. As long as I'm here, nothing is forbidden. Looking at the whole world, other than the Flood Witch and his eldest brother's son-in-law, there was at most Taoist Lei. The rest were mediocre, and he wasn't afraid of anyone. Even if the Umno Alliance's Great Fire, which were to come face to face, they would at most be on par with him. Even if he and the Great Fire, which were to really fight, it wouldn't be a problem to protect Swishaoduo's life. Fourth in the world. That's how awesome he was. He had the confidence to say that. Although Yu Xingqian, Taoist Feng, the Great Fire Witch, and the Golden-Scaled Wind Emperor were all unconvinced of his position as the fourth in the world, none of them had the ability to defeat him. Yes, he couldn't win against any of them. Everyone's strength was about the same. Even if they were to fight to the death, both sides would definitely suffer and perish together. But there was nothing wrong with everyone being equal to the fourth in the world. With such strength, wouldn't it be a huge joke if an accident happened just to protect one person? Not to mention, the various great witches of the Umno Alliance were in seclusion at this moment. Who am I afraid of? Who else? I'm Lei Changtian, demon ancestor. Awesome. In short, this was a huge opportunity for this kid. It all depended on whether he could grasp it, and to what extent he could grasp it. Originally, after Swishaoduo landed, his aura disappeared after a short while. This was something that the old man didn't expect. But the old man wasn't too worried about this. Ever since this kid took out the earth hair dryer, and that mysterious flame disappeared, he knew that this kid still had many secrets on him. So what if he disappeared? As long as the soul connection wasn't broken, he wasn't dead. As long as he wasn't dead, everything was fine. Moreover, that disappearance disappeared right after landing. It was impossible for him to die in such a short time, that he probably used some special technique to hide. Judging from this kid's previous actions, it was normal for him to hide immediately. It had to be said that although this old man only interacted with Swishaoduo for a short while, his understanding of Swishaoduo's character was far better than many people who thought that they understood Swishaoduo very well. This was a wretched and shameless little thing, and he also had an infinite sense of despicableness. The kind of despicableness that he inherited from Zhuchangchang. Zhuchangchang, that despicable bastard. I'll definitely teach him a lesson. That how could the Umno Alliance garrison on the ground turn a blind eye to something that fell from the sky in broad daylight, especially when it looked like a person? Naturally, they organized people to check the situation and see if something had happened. But when they came over, there was nothing. After checking the area over and over again, he could only find traces of the ground being turned over. Turn it over and see. The general faintly felt that something was wrong. He turned the ground over and continued to search, but he couldn't find anything. Strange, this is really strange. The general frowned and looked up for a long time. Finally he waved his hand and said, "Everyone disperse." The doubts in his heart didn't disappear. He thought that this was already the UMNO Alliance's territory. If there was a spy who sneaked in, wouldn't that be too bold? But as soon as it landed, it disappeared without a trace. It was still very strange. But he paced around alone with his hands behind his back for a long time without finding anything. Finally he left. Zhuo cultivated in the tower for almost a week. 3 or 4 hours had passed in the outside world. Only then did he dare to leave the tower to explore the outside world. It had to be mentioned that after a large amount of newly obtained Astral Soul's jade powder entered the tower, the ley lines from the Crown Prince's Academy were finally melted into a ball by Xiaolong. Now, the ley lines that completely belonged to the Demon League had transformed into an embryonic ley line that was 50 to 60 meters high and 700 meters long. Because of the laurel honey, the sword of Empress Enviwa had also recovered a little. It was stabbed straight into the ground on the highest rock of the Demon League's earth vein. The entire sword was emitting a misty light, faintly exuding a sacred aura. Now the vitality of the tower was getting stronger and stronger. The so-called self-created world was becoming more and more real. The Wahuang sword, which was at the highest point of the ley lines of the Demon League, seemed to have become the source of the scattered qi of heaven and earth, strengthening the ley lines of the Demon League. Xiaolong was working hard on the other side, absorbing the scattered qi. Xiao would occasionally run over to the Wahuang sword to help, and occasionally run over to Xiaolong to help. He was busy every day like a little fool. Although he was a helper, he offended both sides thoroughly. But he still enjoyed it. It was not enough to describe him as just a little fool. Bai and Jiu also appeared from time to time, but they were more inclined to cause trouble. The two little guys floated in the space. If they leaned a little towards one side, the absorption of qi would be much faster. If they leaned a little towards the other side, the absorption would be much faster. So as long as they came out and leaned towards one side, Xiaolong and the Wahuang sword would take advantage of the situation to absorb it. However, compared to the little dragon who could lower himself and shamelessly flatter the little dragon, the sword of Empress Enviwa always maintained a high and mighty attitude, which made Little White and Little Jiu unable to stand it. "It's just a sword. What are you being so arrogant for? Let me tell you, your era has long passed. The current Jianghu has replaced the old with a new generation, but you still dare to act like a veteran." Chapter 959. Bai Bai and Jiu looked down on the Wahuang sword. If you still had your original strength that allowed you to look down on the universe, that would be fine too. If you put on airs, everyone would still kneel down and lick your boots. Unfortunately, you don't have the strength you used to have. Well, it should be said that you haven't recovered your previous strength. Therefore, Bai Bai and Jiu quickly joined forces with Xiaolong and suppressed the Wahuang sword. The sword of Empress Enviwa felt extremely suffocated. What made it even more furious was that Xiao Xiao didn't even know which side she was on. Xiao Xiao didn't even know which side she was on. Moreover, he was more similar to Bai Bai and Jiu in his current state. Well, everyone was ignorant and shared the same bad habits. As a result, he followed behind Little White and Little Jiu every day, flying around happily. "You are the 7th prince. What you are doing now is helping the enemy. Do you know that? If the Wahuang sword had eyes, it would have been furious. All in all, the Tower of Annihilation was steadily improving. As the realm energy of the Demon League was formed, it was still trying to merge with the original realm energy, even though there was a clear distinction between it and the realm energy. To be more specific, the realm energy was intertwined. Everyone was the same in essence, but on the surface, they still had to fight and compete with each other. The realm energy of the astral souls was the current leader of the Tower of Annihilation. It was powerful and would only accept submission. It would never accept private collaboration. It was the time for it to be arrogant. Xiaolong was working on the two realms, trying to get them to work together as much as possible. Could this side take a small step back? Could this side take a big step back? Everything could be discussed. The main reason why he was working so hard was that Xiaolong was also anxious. As long as these two realms were combined, the efficiency of the realm would double or even more. Now 1 day outside was 2 months inside. After the fusion was successful, 1 day outside would be half a year inside. How could this gap be described with just the word big? Furthermore, as long as the two pieces fused together, the space of the Tower of Annihilation would truly be a world of its own. It gave birth to the first living purple chi that belonged to heaven and earth. When that happens, a brand new heavenly Tao will sprout. As long as it sprout, I, Xiao Long, will transform into the first creator dragon in the Great Thousand Universe, since the beginning of time. Don't throw a tantrum, don't be arrogant, when it's time to lower your head, when it's time to submit. When it's time to submit, you should also compromise appropriately. It was a pity that Swishaoduo, the actual owner of the tower, had no idea about the various open and covert struggles, cliques, alliances, and many other changes that took place in the tower. He only felt that there seemed to be wind in the Tower of Annihilation, but all he could sense was the east wind and the west wind. It kept blowing back and forth, either the east wind overpowering the west wind, or the west wind overpowering the east wind. As a result, Swishaoduo's hair fluttered left and right. When it fluttered left, it was naturally 46, and when it fluttered right, it was naturally 28. As it fluttered in the wind, his hair appeared to be in a very smooth state, which saved him the trouble of combing it. Swishaoduo, who deeply felt that his own strength was insufficient and his cultivation base was shallow, worked hard to cultivate in the Tower of Annihilation. With painstaking efforts, he pushed his cultivation base to the peak of the cloud transformation realm and suppressed his vital essence 53 times. This was already a shocking number, even in the eyes of Swishaoduo and Zhuxiaonian. But Swishaoduo felt that he could suppress it another 3 times. But now, he was in the territory of the Umno Alliance. If he suppressed it to the limit, and had no choice but to break through, he would have to go outside for a period of time to achieve the Heaven-Man connection. But that would be too risky. Therefore, Swishaoduo decided to break through to the God-reigning realm after suppressing it to 55 times. Although it would not be the limit, it would still be a lot more than Yin Yin Cat. Swishaoduo had just exited the Tower of Annihilation and tiptoed forward for more than 10 miles. That the Umno Alliance's camp was just ahead. He had to try to go around it. This was his first attempt. He had to succeed. Otherwise, there would be no way back. As he got closer to the Umno Alliance's camp, Swishaoduo became more and more tiptoed. All of a sudden, with a soft paw sound as the beginning, the rumbling sound continued to be heard. The mountain in front of Swishaoduo suddenly collapsed, and it was rumbling all the way down. Suddenly there was a commotion. Someone even shouted, and the sound shook the surroundings. "There's a spy!" Boom! Hundreds of people flew into the air and surrounded him. Swishaoduo looked at the collapsed mountain with a dumbfounded expression. "Old man, it seems like you really have a grudge against my dad." The unforeseen event was, of course, the work of the old man. Since Swishaoduo exited the Tower of Annihilation, the old man had sensed Swishaoduo's reappearance at the first moment. After that, the old man saw the series of tiptoeing stealthily. Since it was an experience, how could the old man let Swishaoduo pass so easily? Naturally, he had to make a noise and expose Swishaoduo's whereabouts. Swishaoduo didn't even have the time to curse before someone discovered him. "Over there. There's a spy. It's someone from the astral souls." A murderous aura suddenly rose. A figure had already closed in on Swishaoduo like lightning. A sword light, like a viper, was aimed at the vital point of his throat, full of murderous intent. Swishaoduo waved his hand, and the civet sword suddenly appeared in his hand. The two swords collided in an instant, and sparks flew. The man grunted and retreated, blood spurting from the corner of his mouth. When the two swords collided, the sword in his hand was broken on the spot. At the same time, his internal organs were violently shaken and almost fell apart. Swishaoduo was stunned for a moment. The opponent was only a divine reigning warrior. With Swishaoduo's previous record, it was more than enough to kill the opponent with one strike. But as soon as they started fighting, the opponent was not only alert, but also quick to react. Knowing that he was no match for him, he stopped fighting and retreated. This divine reigning warrior was quite something, but Swishaoduo had already severely injured the opponent. Just as he was about to chase after him, the sound of metal blades cutting through the air came from all directions. The warriors of the Wizard Alliance cooperated with each other, to the point of being extremely familiar with each other in battle. In a split second, Swishaoduo was already surrounded from all sides, and was in a terrible situation, where he was surrounded by enemies from all directions. Swishaoduo snorted coldly. He grabbed a bunch of small gourds in his hand, and then 8 of them wrapped around his body. With Swishaoduo's fear of death, and the various trump cards he had prepared early on, how could he not have predicted that he would be surrounded from all sides by the enemy? Of course he was prepared. Today was the day to test it. Although this military camp was in the territory of the Umno Alliance, there were not too many strong martial artists stationed here. Most of the martial artists who surrounded him were in the nascent soul stage, and some even had the elixir stage. With their level, how could they withstand Swishaoduo's hidden weapons? Puff puff puff. Without exception, the gourds pierced through the heads of the 8 people who bore the brunt of the attack. Their bodies swayed a little before they fell and died. The moment Swishaoduo glanced at them, he had already judged the level of strength of the enemies. Although there were many of them, their combat power was mediocre. He immediately launched a counterattack. With a sweep of his sword chi, dozens of people were cut in half at the waist. Dozens of space rings fell into his hands at the same time. Swishaoduo was even more familiar with this kind of thing. Then his body followed his sword. The majestic sword chi slowly circled around, and caught up with the leading military officer, who attacked at the beginning. It pierced through the back of his head, and killed this god-reigning level master. Swishaoduo continued to charge outwards. There was no one in his hands who could withstand his attack. He rushed out like a hot knife through butter. In an instant, he had already rushed hundreds of miles away. Although Swishaoduo's journey was smooth, he did not let his guard down. Instead, he was fully alert for the impending danger. Because at this moment, the military alarm of the Umno Alliance had sounded all over the place. At least the surrounding thousands of miles had already been informed of the current situation. A spy from the Astral Souls has infiltrated. He is currently fleeing in the direction of the Astral Souls. He is probably escaping from the inland. He must have a lot of information that is unfavorable to us. We must intercept and kill him. This person is extremely ferocious. His cultivation level is high. A god-reigning level master died in his hands in 2 moves. Attention, all parties. Intercept and kill this spy from the Astral Souls at all costs. Report again. Currently 6-star alert. Those who intercept and kill him will be promoted by 1 level. Their family members will be given a 2-level relocation order. Their unit will be collectively rewarded. Location: 1 day later. Report, emergency report. The spy from the Astral Souls has gone berserk. His methods are extremely vicious and cruel. Level 1 promotion, 7-star alert. Those who intercept and kill him. 3 days later. Report. Level 9 promotion. No need to capture him alive. He must be killed. At all costs. Reward for success. At this point, the alert related to Swishaoduo had soared all the way to 9 stars. And this was already the highest alert level of the Umno Alliance. It had not appeared for many years. Now such a high-level alert suddenly broke out. Immediately, many of the high-level warriors in the inland of the Umno Alliance were extremely excited. They were eager to give it a try. Of course, facing a target with the highest alert level would be dangerous. But as long as this 9-star alert was eliminated, the rewards would be unimaginably great. It had been many years since they had a chance to improve themselves. How could they miss it? No matter how dangerous the target was, could it be more dangerous than attacking the Sun Moon Pass? After all, it came from the Umno Alliance's own territory. No matter how big the risk was, it was still small in their own territory. That at this time, Swishaoduo was running and fighting in the forest. So far, it had been 3 days and 3 nights. In these 3 days and 3 nights, he had spent his time running and fighting nonstop. It was also in these 3 days and 3 nights that he had killed more than 1,000 masters of the Umno Alliance. However, the warriors of the Umno Alliance were rushing over from all directions. Not only were there a sea of people, but their cultivation levels were also getting higher. At the beginning, Swordsmanship had destroyed all the enemies easily, but now he was gradually feeling tired. Although it was not to the extent that it was difficult to deal with them, it was not as easy as before. Although he had the Tower of Annihilation, and could hide in it at any time to avoid the attacks, Swordsmanship did not want to do so for the time being. Chapter 960. Swordsmanship knew this very well. Just like what the old man said, the current situation was indeed a crisis, but it was also a huge opportunity for him to greatly improve himself. Since he stepped onto the path of cultivation, even though he'd experienced life and death battles, when it came to a high-intensity battle like the one before him, where he was constantly walking on the edge of death and practically dancing on the tip of a blade, it was still the first time in his life that he'd encountered such an experience. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and persevered in fighting different enemies. He kept killing his opponents. The cat spirit sword had been stained with blood in the past few days. It was already 10 times more than what he had experienced before. Hunt in the Wansong Mountains. This was the official statement from the Umno Alliance. For the masters of the Umno Alliance, the spy from the astral souls was already a dead man. Everything that was happening now was just a process. It was just a matter of time until the final conclusion. Even if this person's cultivation was high, what could he do? Facing the encirclement of the entire Umno Alliance, he would be killed in the end. It was absolutely inevitable. The other difference was who would kill this fellow in the end, and who would obtain this long-awaited honor of meritorious service. That in a big city of the Umno Alliance. Shahai held a piece of information and walked into the inner courtyard excitedly. Big brother, are you here? In a quiet garden, there were dozens of young people. There were both men and women. They were talking and laughing with each other. It was a noisy atmosphere. This group of people was full of energy. They were handsome and tall. Obviously, they were all geniuses. However, if one looked closely, it was not difficult to see that the 40 to 50 young people actually had their own camps. They could be roughly divided into 3 groups, each led by 3 young people. One of them had a handsome face and a slightly thin body. His eyes were squinted all year round, as if he could not open them. He gave people a friendly feeling. He did not have to make any expression. When he met people, they would feel that he was smiling. He always had a friendly look. It was actually a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. The number of people gathered around him was also the largest. There were 27 or 28 men and women. The other leader was a young man who stood there like an unsheathed sword, emitting a sharp aura. His expression was cold. This person seemed to have never sat down and rarely moved around. The 7 or 8 men and women gathered around him were all cold and solemn. If one closed their eyes and relied on their senses to sense, it was not 7 or 8 people in front of them, but 7 or 8 unsheathed swords that were emitting a dense killing intent. The leader of the group was a young woman. She was not born with an outstanding beauty. In fact, she even looked a little chubby. Only this woman's actions were full of kindness, and the 15 to 16 people around her were all very quiet. Some were even holding handkerchiefs to embroider, and 2 men were each holding a novel and reading. As he read, he laughed foolishly again and again. Taking a closer look at the title of the book, World Defying 9 Heavens. No wonder he was so immersed in it, it made sense. Big brother. Shahai hurriedly rushed in, but when he saw so many people, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, the cold young man slowly turned his head and his body. There was no fluctuation in his eyes, but his tone was a little impatient. What's the matter? Why are you making such a big fuss? But everyone could hear that he was actually not impatient. It was just that at this time, he should use an impatient tone. So he used an impatient tone. But in fact, in his heart, there was no fluctuation at all. The other 2 groups of people had the same reaction. They didn't even lift their eyelids. Shahai didn't call him. He called him Big Brother, not Third Brother, And not big sister. Big brother, avenge me. My biggest enemy has come to the Umno Alliance. Shahai's face was red. It's the number one genius of the astral souls, Swordsmanship, who can fight people 2 levels higher than him. This bastard, when we were in the nascent soul trial space. Shahai's big brother, the cold young man, narrowed his eyes. Swordsmanship, he's here. On the other side, the squinting young man and the ordinary-looking young woman raised their heads at once when they heard this name. Swordsmanship, is it really him? Yes, it's him, Shahai said. Look at this newly issued 9-star alert. The person on it must be Swordsmanship. Look at this information, this intelligence report. Young man in his 20s, handsome one. 89 meters tall, well-proportioned, wielding a sharp sword that can be described as a divine blade. He has countless hidden weapons in his hands, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. None of the hidden weapons missed. According to the investigation, the wounds of those who were killed by the hidden weapons were all fatal. As for those hidden weapons, they were just ordinary small white jade gourds. Vicious in his attacks, savage in nature. All of these are characteristics of Swordsmanship. That bastard is like this, the cold young man said indifferently. But how long has it been since Swordsmanship participated in the nascent soul trial with you? The information recorded here. Look, the strength of the person who made the report should be at the peak of the God reigning stage, or the early stage of the profound returning stage. The cold young man said indifferently. It's only been a few months, and Swordsmanship has advanced from the nascent soul to the profound returning stage? Do you think I'll believe that? Or do you believe it? No. When Swordsmanship was at the nascent soul stage, he was invincible among his peers. Even if all of us joined forces, we still weren't his match. In other words, when he was at the nascent soul stage, his battle strength was no different from the peak of the cloud transformation stage. And not just any peak of the cloud transformation stage, but almost equivalent to the God reigning stage. After a few months of cultivation, his battle strength has increased to the peak of the God reigning stage, and even the profound returning stage. Although it sounds inconceivable, it's not absolutely impossible. The cold young man frowned and pondered. The ordinary-looking young woman said, Shaja, what Shahai said is not without reason. The increase of some genius's battle strength can't be measured by common sense. It's not impossible to reach the heavens in a single step with a chance encounter. The cold young man Shaja nodded lightly. Yes, there's always something unexpected in this world. The smiling young man said, according to the information, this Swordsmanship is 18 years old. His current age should be 18 years old, less than a month old. Further information shows that he only started to have the talent to cultivate last year. If the person in this information is really him, the squinting young man said indifferently, then this person might be even more terrifying than Mo Ingfeng, who was assassinated by the demon monarch of the astral souls. Mo Ingfeng. This was the name of a legend belonging to the Umno Alliance. Although he was only 22 years old when he died, he was still a legend. However, he was an out-and-out legend, a legend that was destined to become a myth. When Mo Ingfeng was born with a perfect soul, almost everyone thought that he was the reincarnation of Zhu Wu. When Mo Ingfeng was 12 years old, he had already broken through to the nascent soul stage and suppressed his true yuan 17 times in the inner core stage. This was an unimaginable number that most people couldn't comprehend. After that, he continued to improve. When Mo Ingfeng was at the peak of the soul-controlling stage, he wasn't at a disadvantage when facing ordinary Sky Soar Realm cultivators. He could even defeat them. When Mo Ingfeng was 22 years old, he used his soul-controlling stage cultivation to suppress his true yuan 19 times to break through to the returning profound realm. At that time, this progress shocked the entire Umno Alliance. At that time, not to mention that Sky Soar Realm cultivators weren't allowed to make a move. Even if they sent out a Sky Soar Realm cultivator, they would most likely be killed by Mo Ingfeng. But at that time, the demon monarch of the astral souls, Lei Changtian, sent his 36 demon monarchs to infiltrate the Umno Alliance. No one expected that when Mo Ingfeng's grandfather was celebrating his birthday, When all the experts of the family were gathered, they would brazenly make a move. A total of 8 peak sky soar realm demon monarchs made a move at the same time. They launched a sneak attack on the birthday banquet and killed this Wu people genius on the spot. At that time, this matter almost led to the final battle between the two continents. Even the Flood Witch was furious and made a move. She fought with the demon monarch and killed all 36 demon monarchs of the astral souls. But no matter what, Mo Ingfeng was still dead. No matter how much of a genius he was, no matter how legendary he was, once he died, it would be difficult for him to become a legend. Since then, no one in the Wizard Alliance continent had been able to match Mo Ingfeng in terms of soul power, cultivation speed, and battle prowess that surpassed his cultivation level. He defeated a Sky Soar Realm cultivator at the age of 22. What kind of glorious battle record was this? Even after that, Lei Yizhen, who was highly praised by the Flood Witch, appeared. But when compared to Mo Ingfeng, Lei Yizhen was still a level lower. In fact, it wasn't just a level lower. Although everyone present looked young, they knew each other well. If one were to compare their actual age to an ordinary person, they would already be considered old. But first of all, they looked better this way. Second of all, their fathers all looked like they were in their 30s or 40s. If they looked old and gray-haired, how could they still look good? Therefore, in the eyes of ordinary people, they were just a bunch of young people who had just come of age. Shaja's eyes narrowed. He said, "Shahan, you mean? This Xiaoduo is a big threat?" Shahan narrowed his eyes and smiled. "It's not just big. If we want to deal with him, I suggest we use the incineration order." Shaja pondered for a moment. He looked at the ordinary woman and said, "Sha Yu, what do you think?" Sha Yu said indifferently, "The incineration order is the most useful. Since Xiaoduo has come to the Umno Alliance, we can't let him go back alive. And if we go and fight with him, there's a high possibility that we'll just be giving Xiaoduo experience. No matter which one of us dies, it'll be a great loss to our family. But the incineration order is different. Those who use it will only self-destruct. They only want results. There won't be any battles." Chapter 961. You're right. There's no reason to reason with the burning order. Even if the astral souls knew about it, they would have nothing to say. They just didn't want to live anymore and self-destructed. But you were there. Aren't you just unlucky? Haha. What experience? What merit? Xiaoduo won't get a single bit of it. He will only die in the continuous explosions. In the end, he'll be turned into minced meat after the last explosion. But the burning order isn't something we can use. Shaja smiled bitterly. Sha Yu said indifferently, "Hand over Xiaoduo's information to the elders, and let them analyze that he's even more dangerous than Silent Storm Thunderbolt. That's enough. You don't have to say anything. And we don't have to do anything." "That's right." Shahan clapped his hands. "Sister Yu is indeed wise." Sha Yu snorted and said, "But we can't keep this to ourselves. We have to inform the other families. Shahai." "Sister Yu, I'm here." Shahai was very honest. "Spread this news and Xiaoduo's information to the 12 families as soon as possible. Also, tell those families that had young soul transformation stage geniuses who died in the astral souls that Xiaoduo is here. Their great enemy is here. An eye for an eye. An eye for an eye." Sha Yu said coldly. "Let these people go and exhaust them first. If they can really kill Xiaoduo first, then we don't want any of the benefits and merit points. All of it will be theirs. If they fail, then the burning order will be used. At that time, no one will be able to say anything." Sha Yu sighed softly. "The burning order is admirable. If we can prevent too many of them from dying, we should try our best to avoid it. Even if we have to pay a little more, it's only right." "Yes, Sister Yu. Go." Sha Yu said lightly. "We must spread this news throughout the Umno Alliance in the shortest time possible." "Wait." Shahan stopped Shahai. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. "I've thought of a few words. I'll send them out as well." "What words? How many years has it been since the rise of the astral souls?" How many years has it been since the rise of the astral souls? How many years has it been since the three races were pacified? How many years has it been since the world was unified? Shahan narrowed his eyes and said, "Spread the word as soon as possible. Tell them that this is a prophecy passed down in the astral souls. It's fine as long as you don't know anything else." "What is this?" Shahai was confused. What did that mean? "You don't have to worry about it. You just need to spread the news. Someone will naturally interpret it," Shahan said calmly. "All right." Shahai hurried out. He was really anxious now. He didn't expect Zhuo to appear in the Wu people's headquarters. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. "Zhuo kid, since you're here, don't even think about going back. You're destined to be buried here. From now on, the nightmare will cease to exist." Watching Shahai leave, Shayu muttered to herself. She looked at Shahan and said, "Shahan, you're still the most cunning one. No wonder the elders always say that narrow-eyed people don't have good intentions. It's true. Haha." Shahan narrowed his eyes and said, "It's just a psychological trick. It's nothing. However, this Swordsmanship, are you really not going to take a look?" Someone beside said, "Didn't you say that it's not appropriate for us to take action?" Shahan narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Yes, we'll try our best not to take action. However, not taking action doesn't prevent us from watching the show. Also, Zhuo was able to improve so quickly. Do you think that he doesn't have any secrets?" He lowered his voice and said, "I just heard. It's said that when Mo Ingfeng was suddenly killed, someone seemed to have heard a sigh. It was very, very soft. It was said that." He suddenly stopped. The dozens of people around them all pricked up their ears to listen. Shahan said mysteriously, "Those were 4 words. It said that. Unbind." Shaja couldn't help but laugh. "You've read too many novels on Chidian Chinese network, right? That sigh. Is it an old grandpa who carries you around?" Ha ha ha. Everyone burst out laughing. Shahan himself also narrowed his eyes and laughed uncontrollably. However, Shayu pondered for a moment and said, "I'll go and watch the show. I'll go too. We'll all go. Ha ha ha, watching a show is my favorite." Shahan narrowed his eyes and laughed loudly. However, there was a flash of light in his eyes. The so-called system was, of course, a joke made by Shahan. It didn't exist at all. In fact, if such a thing really appeared, for high-level cultivators with a certain level of cultivation, most of them wouldn't care about external objects that could affect their cultivation. They would avoid it like the plague. If they really had a system, it would mean that they would be controlled by others for the rest of their lives. And for cultivators who had entered the path of cultivation, who would be willing to be a puppet for the rest of their lives. Not to mention other things, it would be difficult to deal with inner demons that disturbed one's own state of mind. However, this didn't stop Shahan from using this method to remind everyone that Zhuo might have a great fortune that wasn't inferior to the system. It might even be a great opportunity that was beyond imagination. Although they didn't know what it was exactly, it was inevitable that it would be useful. Everyone chatted and laughed. After a while, they set off together. There weren't any more speculations about Zhuo. However, in the depths of everyone's eyes, there was a flash of light. It was obvious that everyone's mind was spinning with their own thoughts. San Soul's words gave rise to endless associations in everyone's minds. That's right. Zhuo has only entered the path of cultivation for a little more than a year. Previously, he was in a completely useless state and had to repeat 5 years. Suddenly he soared to the sky. There must be a reason. To be able to turn a useless person into the top choice of the current generation of talents, his opportunity might be an innate spiritual treasure. It's said that among the innate spiritual treasures, there are many that can condense spiritual liquid to assist in cultivation. In the early stage of cultivation, it's almost a piece of cake to be able to catch up and surpass geniuses of the same age in half a year. Perhaps Zhuo had such an opportunity? This kind of great fortune in cultivation does exist. For example, it's said that the Ice Abyss, which was originally the brother-in-law of the Fire Abyss Witch, it's said that when the Fire Abyss Witch became a great witch, the ice abyss, which was just a playboy. He even had the elegant title of the #1 scumbag of the younger generation. However, after obtaining the ice soul during an adventure, his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. He went from the #1 scumbag of the younger generation to the #1 scumbag of the 12 Great Witches. It's clear that this kind of thing really exists. There are precedents to follow. It's not just the Ice Abyss Witch. It's said that the southern marshal of the Astral Souls continent, Nan Zhengqian, was also a person who progressed very slowly in cultivation. However, by chance he obtained a mysterious flying knife. That flying knife had the miraculous effect of assisting cultivation. That's why Nan Zhengqian's cultivation speed caught up with his peers, and even became outstanding. It could be said that it was the cornerstone for him to eventually become a marshal. Although this kind of thing can't be said to be everywhere, there are still many people who have seen it. It's not uncommon. And Zhou Xiaoduo, I think, also obtained this kind of opportunity. It's not impossible to seize this kind of opportunity. I believe that as long as Zhou Xiaoduo is killed, the opportunity in his possession will become an ownerless item. If I get it, I'll definitely have a chance to become a great witch, or even an existence that surpasses the great witch. However, with so many people going together, even if I have a chance, it'll be a lot thinner because of these many people. I'll have to think of a way. However, the most important thing now is to go. If I don't go, I won't have a chance at all. As for Shaja, he said indifferently, Zhou Xiaoduo bullied my brother. I must avenge my brother. Everyone was speechless. What a good reason. The news from the desert ocean was sent out one after another. In a very short time, it caused a great commotion among countless Umno Alliance families. Zhou Xiaoduo came to the Umno Alliance. The great enemy who killed their genius actually came to the Umno Alliance. He was simply courting death. This was a heaven-sent opportunity to avenge their genius. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. However, an order was quickly passed down. Zhou Xiaoduo is currently the #1 person on the human favor order list. No family or force is allowed to send experts above the Sky Realm, including Sky Realm experts, to deal with Zhou Xiaoduo. Those who violate this order will be exterminated. When this order was passed down, countless people were puzzled. What was the human favor order? Why were cultivators above the Sky Realm not allowed to deal with Zhou Xiaoduo? However, the higher-ups didn't give any explanation at all. They just passed down an order to the Umno Alliance. The only thing the people below needed to do was to follow the order. Therefore, the human favor order suddenly became the hottest topic in the Umno Alliance. Many people were asking, what is the human favor order? Then the human favor order, which used to only exist in the higher-ups, was revealed in front of everyone. After all, there were many people who knew about the human favor order. Naturally, one person spread it to 10 people, and 10 people spread it to 100 people. I see. So this is the so-called human favor order. This is the protection that the higher-ups give to their geniuses. Everyone enjoys the protection of the human favor order. Naturally, there's nothing wrong with that. But now what should we do? As people learned about the human favor order, the incineration order suddenly came into everyone's attention. It turned out that it could be done like this. Then, many families started to think about it. Many experts of the families had already set out and rushed to the place where Zhou Xiaoduo appeared. Countless geniuses of the Umno Alliance, God Reigning Realm, and Guixian Realm experts had heard of the name Zhou Xiaoduo, who dominated the nascent Soul region. They had long been curious about this person, and naturally set out to find him. At the same time, Shahan's words also began to spread in the Umno Alliance. Chapter 962. How many years will it take for the astral souls to rise? How many years will it take for the astral souls to rise? How many years will it take for the 3 races to be pacified? How many years will it take for the world to be unified? This sentence sounded very normal, but in fact, most people did not think much of it. They just snorted. This was a sentence that had been said in the astral souls continent for many years. Many people were saying it, and many people were looking forward to it. The people of the Astral Souls continent were dreaming too much. They actually wanted to wipe out the three races and unify the world, that they really did not know their limits. However, there were always people with ulterior motives in this world. They were used to making simple things complicated. When they saw this sentence, they all frowned. In their eyes, this sentence had a deeper and more obscure meaning. When they thought of Zhuo, who had recently turned the UMNO alliance upside down, that some people suddenly had a feeling of realization. Then they felt a chill run down their spines. How many years? The key is how many years? This number of years, if we take it apart. If we understand it as many young people, or Zhuo has reached the age of young people. But looking at the situation now, this Zhuo can't be separated. Could this prophecy be referring to Zhuo? Zhuo will pacify the three races in the future? Unify the world? This Zhuo is actually so dangerous? My guess is right? Could it be the truth? Whether it was the truth or not, these people with ulterior motives in the UMNO alliance had, sooner or later, spread their epiphany. Whether it was right or not, it was absolutely necessary to report this discovery. If it was true, the consequences would be too serious. They could not let their guard down. The people of the UMNO alliance immediately contacted their spies in the Astral Souls continent. Did this sentence appear before them? Speaking of this, he had to praise Sha Han for his meticulousness, because this sentence had truly existed before. Although it was only a part of it that had been dissected, this sentence was simply too common. Whenever there was a gathering of friends, they would sigh and say, "How many years will it take for astral souls to flourish?" All of the spies were dumbfounded at the confirmation of the relevant clues. It was such a normal sentence. What did he want to confirm? Was there anything worth confirming? Hence he replied, "Isn't this sentence very common? This sentence had been said here for God knows how many years already." There was nothing wrong with this reply. However, the moment the Wizard Alliance received this reply, they were even more horrified and felt their hearts turn cold. It was actually true. Then as a prophecy, wouldn't it be a perfect match for Zhuo? Couldn't they be more compatible? Thus, the UMNO alliance came to a conclusion. Kill Zhuo at all costs. Request for the incineration order. At this moment, in the faraway continent of astral souls, Shangjing, another secret message was sent. The heavenly Tao of astral souls is chaotic and obscured from the heavens. However, I can vaguely see a malefic star heading south, hanging over the witch land. My guess is that the number one genius of the human relations order, Zhuo, is currently in the UMNO alliance's territory. I hope that the UMNO alliance will do everything in their power to kill him. We must not let him return to the astral souls. This was a highly confidential piece of information. It was the highest level of confidentiality, and it was directly sent to the highest office of the UMNO alliance. After the other side received the secret letter and confirmed that it was a drawing of a white cloud, they did not dare to be negligent and immediately reported it to the heavenly kings of the Wizard Alliance, who were in charge of all the affairs of the Wizard Alliance continent. The heavenly kings also realized the seriousness of the situation. This was a message that was sent at the risk of exposing the biggest mole in the organization. It was obvious that the spy attached great importance to this matter. Where is Zhuo now? What's his position? The target is currently approaching the Scarlet Sun Mountains. He's currently moving around the Lone Bamboo Mountains at an extremely fast speed. Order the nearby garrisons to seal off the Lone Bamboo Mountains and the Scarlet Sun Mountains. Not only the roads, but even the secret places in the sky, the ground, and the forests must be heavily guarded. Although Sky Realm cultivators and above can't attack, they can lock onto the target's position from high up in the sky. They must report their position at all times, so that the target has nowhere to hide. Use the incineration order immediately to kill this person and eliminate all future troubles. Send out all the UMNO Alliance's incineration order holders and divide them into 10 battle echelons. The first wave will be a 100-man incineration order group as a probing attack. After this wave of attack, we'll determine the follow-up attack pattern based on the situation. Yes. For a moment, the UMNO Alliance's territory was in turmoil. This series of changes made the demonic path ancestral master, Lei Changtian, a little dumbfounded. With his experience and shrewd eyesight, how could he not see that the current situation was starting to go wrong? It was gradually developing in a direction that was completely out of his control. At this moment, he was still floating in the sky and overseeing the overall situation. Naturally, he could clearly sense that the movements and auras of the nearby Wizard Alliance cities, military camps, garrisons, and other forces suddenly showed an intense turbulence that was similar to a boiling pot. Then in a very short period of time, the auras of countless high-level cultivators gathered from all directions. The garrisons of the 5 legions at the front also began to move in unison towards the Scarlet Sun Mountains and the Lone Bamboo Mountains. The overall movement of the army was like a giant pincer. It was as if they were going to surround this place and block off all possible escape routes. Even further away, the army that was originally heading towards the front lines suddenly turned around and rushed over here. Such a targeted movement made Lei Changtian sweat on his forehead. How could there be such a big movement? The current movement was so big that it could be said to be a big breakthrough. Just the size of the 6 legions that were mobilized had already exceeded 600,000 people. And with every passing second, the momentum that was pressing towards this place was a little thicker. And the only thing that could cause such a situation and create such a feeling was that a large number of experts were gathering from afar and from all directions. On the 4th day, the first batch of people had already rushed into the Lone Bamboo Mountains. And this first batch of people had already reached 3,000 people. And after this first batch of people rushed in, there was an endless stream of people coming in and continuing to enter. Lei Changtian was high up in the sky, looking down from above. He looked at the high-level cultivators of the Wizard Alliance from all directions. It was like a gathering of ants. The black mass of people kept rushing over from afar and plunging into the ground. At first, it was in groups of 3 to 5. Then it was in groups of 30 to 50. Then, on the 5th day, it was already in groups of 3 to 500 people rushing down. What the hell? What's going on? Lei Changtian was dumbfounded and speechless. For a long time he was speechless. Speaking of which, he had already tried his best to overestimate the influence of his grandson. But he still didn't expect such a result. Especially when he checked the momentum of the thousands of Skysoar realm experts that had suddenly gathered. He started to feel a little numb. Then he saw that there were a few Dao integration stage experts hiding among them, and they were using their divine senses to lock down the Crimson Sun Mountain area. Lei Changtian felt even more guilty. Lei Changtian felt like his butt was on fire. This fucking can't go too far, right? Speaking of the UMNO Alliance's current lineup, not to mention that Zhuo had yet to reach the God-reigning realm. Even if he was at the peak of the God-reigning realm, or even the peak of the profound returning realm, it would be extremely difficult to win over them. Lei Changtian checked again and again, and after confirming that there were no signs of great shamans making a move, he felt relieved. As long as there are no great shamans leading the team. Who was Lei Changtian? He was a peerless expert, second only to the 3 pillars of the astral souls of the UMNO Alliance, Dao League and Astral Souls. As long as there were no peerless experts of the same level as him present, it wouldn't be difficult for him to take Swordsmanship away safely with his skills. However, no matter how powerful Lei Changtian was, he didn't dare to face the current lineup of the UMNO Alliance head-on. Sometimes, a person's strength was limited, even if it was him. If he wanted to face an army of hundreds of thousands of high-level cultivators head-on, other than the Flood Witch's peerless hammer and a certain long saber, even Taoist Lei wouldn't dare to face them head-on. Lei Changtian was certain that although the current lineup was huge and had greatly exceeded his expectations, as long as there were no great shamans leading the team, the situation was still within his control. However, if any of the 12 great shamans appeared here, this old man would immediately throw away his face and ask for help from Yu Dongtian and his son, as well as the great commanders of the 4 directions. However, the The current situation still made this old man, no matter how confident he was, somewhat frightened. What on earth did this kid do? How could a junior like him cause such a big commotion in the UMNO alliance? Damn it. Even if I threw Nan Zhengqian here, I might not be able to cause such an effect, right? It was true that Lei Changtian was the demon ancestor, and he was experienced in the ways of the world. However, he hadn't stepped foot in the mortal world for many years, so it was inevitable that the information he knew was limited. For example, he knew about the secret training in the Starlight Mountains, but he didn't know much about it. For example, he didn't know what his good grandson had done in there. He also didn't know how great his grandson's ability to cause trouble was. Let's see. For the first time, Lei Changtian's face showed a worried expression. He had already started to think, if things went really bad, I would directly rush down and grab him by the scruff of his neck and run away. No one in the UMNO Alliance camp could stop me. However, things had developed to this point, and Lei Changtian was really a little bit at a loss. Daughter, don't worry. Dad won't harm my grandson. At this moment, Xiaoduo was already bathed in blood. He was like a faint trace of blood in the forest, continuing to advance towards the southeast. His direction had always been constant. That was the direction of the Sun-Moon Pass. As long as he killed his way back, he would be safe. Chapter 963. And one of the major reasons why Xiaoduo continued to advance without any hesitation was because now, it was just the beginning. The news had not spread widely, and the blocking forces along the way were not very strong. As long as he rushed all the way like this, he could shorten the distance by a lot. This was also the easiest time to rush. It was estimated that after rushing through this wave, it would really be the time when the bayonet was read, when the masters came out in large numbers and countless strong pillars blocked the way. Only then would he need to go all out and risk his life to deal with it. As for now, while the masters of the enemy had not arrived yet, he only needed to rush forward, maximizing his speed and shortening the distance between himself and the other side. Like a light smoke, he moved at the speed of light in the mountain forest. On this side, there was a loud bang, and half of the mountain was blown up. But he had already gone 10,000 meters in the other direction, and started to kill again. The sword in his hand, the hidden weapons in his hand, he constantly attacked and killed the enemy. Bianjiu anxiously cried out. But Xiaoduo was not moved at all. Now was not the time to use the Eternal Stone of Astral Souls and the 99 Cat Hammer. He knew very well that every corpse he killed was being studied by someone behind. The Eternal Stone of Astral Souls was his trump card, and could not be easily exposed. And the 99 Cat Hammer, even more so. So far, there were already 2,000 space rings stained with blood in the Tower of Annihilation. Although they were all low level, but even a mosquito's leg was meat, and as long as he brought it back, it could be exchanged for money. They were all resources. With another loud bang, 40 to 50 people rushed forward together and swarmed over. Xiaoduo did not even blink, and more than 50 small gourds poured out like a storm. The cat spirit sword in his hand was as fast as a special chef cutting shredded potatoes, and he chopped off 49 arms. His empty left hand was not idle either, and with a flow of energy, he skillfully grabbed all 49 rings in his hand. His body was like a meteor, rushing through the 49 people who were lying on the ground. Although his movements were frequent from beginning to end, his speed did not slow down at all. The series of movements were as smooth as flowing water, natural and without the slightest hesitation. The only flaw in this series of actions was probably the landing point of the 50th small gourd. Although it passed through a big tree and exploded on the forehead of a person behind the tree, taking away his life, the position was a little too far. Xiaoduo couldn't get the ring he was carrying with him. He could only choose to give up. While he thought to himself that it was a pity, he was already 3,000 meters away. After killing another 10-man squad, Xiaoduo dashed into a patch of dense grass on the left side, as if he was playing whack-a-mole. Then he drilled 3 meters into the ground, burning holes along the way. In one breath, he had covered a distance of more than 100 meters. At this point, He had already entered the territory of Lone Bamboo Mountain. The Lone Bamboo Mountain range was located in the center. It was famous because of the Lone Bamboo Mountain that was tens of thousands of meters high. The name of Lone Bamboo Mountain came from the lone starlight bamboo that grew at the top of the mountain. But now, the legendary starlight bamboo had already been cut down by the Zhumang shaman of the Umno Alliance to be used as a weapon. There was not even a single bamboo on Lone Bamboo Mountain. It had not lived up to its name for a long time. But today, there was an extra military camp on the mountainside of Lone Bamboo Mountain. It had fallen from the sky a day ago and had already been set up. In just one day and one night, they had already dug more than 100,000 traps on the mountain, all to serve Zhuoshaoduo, because this was the only way to return to the Sun Moon Pass. This path full of traps and thorns would lead Zhuoshaoduo to the path of hell. Even if all 20,000 of us die, we must kill Zhuoshaoduo. Don't wait for the burning order. Don't tell me that our Umno Alliance's soldiers don't even dare to self-destruct? Kill Zhuoshaoduo. I will sacrifice myself to pave a path to the heavens for my other brothers. Beyond Lone Bamboo Mountain is Lone Bamboo City. In Lone Bamboo City, there are our fellow villagers, our parents, our children, our wives, our descendants. Once Zhuoshaoduo enters Lone Bamboo City, we may not be able to kill him in the city, but we can imagine how much damage Lone Bamboo City will suffer. I heard that this Zhuoshaoduo is the most vicious and merciless person. He kills people like flies, rapes and pillages. There is nothing he won't do. His hands are stained with blood. We can't let such a murderer near our families. We can't let that happen. Never. Kill Zhuoshaoduo. Kill Zhuoshaoduo. Kill the spy from the astral souls and protect us. We are men of the Umno Alliance, and we have the courage to do so. The commander's speech made the cultivators' blood boil. Their morale soared to the heavens. The commander of the 20,000 soldiers was at the peak of the profound returning realm, a half-step ascension realm cultivator. Against Zhuoshaoduo, it was the perfect time to send all of them. Although there weren't any ascension realm cultivators, there were still quite a few profound returning realm cultivators. Zhuoshaoduo rushed into Lone Bamboo Mountain, and after less than 500 meters in stealth, he felt that something was wrong. This was clearly a net waiting. Looking at the countless thin threads in front of him, as well as the intertwining and flickering infrared rays in front of him. Damn it, I was wondering why the pursuers didn't come here. It turns out that they have already set up an inescapable trap for me. Originally, Zhuoshaoduo's plan was to find a place to hide and dig. The difficulty of digging a tunnel was that it was inefficient and time-consuming. It also consumed too much energy and was difficult to continue. However, Zhuoshaoduo had the Tower of Annihilation in his hands. If he was underground, he could enter a state of recovery at any time. As the difference in the flow of time between the two sides was not small, as long as he controlled it well, he could almost form an uninterrupted continuous excavation. Furthermore, with the help of the heavenly witch copper shovel, digging was a piece of cake. Using this method to pass through Lone Bamboo Mountain was much cheaper than facing the enemy head-on. It was also much safer. But now, after seeing how tight the enemy's defense was, his original plan was definitely not going to work. If he made a mistake, he would be caught like a turtle in a jar. Zhuoshaoduo's eyes flickered as he made up his mind. Using his fastest speed, he charged forward forcefully. It was as if a bolt of lightning had passed through the sky, covering a distance of 1,500 meters. Along the way, he broke more than 10,000 threads. Below, boom 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 boom. In the whole area, all the buried landmines and bombs were detonated one after another. For a moment the mountain shook and the ground shook. Smoke and dust filled the sky. The power of modern explosives was shown in an instant. However, Zhuoshaoduo had already gone thousands of meters away. His body turned into energy and rushed up to the sky. In an instant he moved 3,000 meters horizontally. After making a turn in the air, he arrived at the other side and landed silently. With a slight movement of the heavenly witch copper shovel, Zhuoshaoduo had already burrowed into the dense grass. They dug all the way down. Although the original plan of digging through the mountain was no longer feasible, they could still use this method to temporarily gain some breathing time. Unfortunately, Zhuo was too optimistic. All of a sudden Zhuo, who was already 70 to 80 meters underground, felt his heart throbbing as he felt that something was wrong. Danger! Although he did not know why, Zhuo did not hesitate to enter the Tower of Annihilation the moment the sense of danger rose in his heart. At this moment, at the position where he was burrowing down, about 10 meters below, an unknown number of explosives were suddenly detonated. The strong explosive force rushed up from the ground like a volcanic eruption. The concentrated explosion produced a mushroom cloud that rushed into the air. At this moment, half of the mountain was almost blown up. A few figures flashed to the high altitude of the explosion and smelled the pungent smell of gunpowder. A handsome middle-aged man wearing the military uniform of the UMNO Alliance said, "It seems that I guessed right." Seeing that the military has set up a tight defense, the other party simply charged forward and detonated the explosives. Then he used his super body movement to move to another position in another direction. He even went underground. Finally, the arrangement was right. Even if he went underground, it would be difficult to avoid. But I don't know if he was hurt this time. Don't be blindly optimistic. If you predict the situation to be worse, it will only be beneficial for the encirclement later. Any carelessness or negligence may cause all our efforts to be in vain. The other person had a resolute face and hawk-like eyes. As soon as the mushroom cloud rose, the military experts in all directions rushed to the center of the explosion, without any regard for their own safety. In 3 seconds, they had already turned the area upside down, but they did not find anything. The handsome middle-aged officer of the UMNO Alliance said slowly with a sullen face, "Just now the target did appear from here. Otherwise, the explosives would not have detonated. Only after he burrowed into the ground, and the microwave oscillator picked up his aura would this happen. Not to mention that the oscillator's waves can distinguish between friend and foe. Our people would definitely not rashly enter this area at this time." So the person who triggered the microwave oscillator could only be Zhuo. This time, Zhuo must have been shaken. Even if it did not take his life, it would not be easy for him. If Zhuo can't find it, or if he is not injured, then Zhuo either has a unique concealment technique, or a defensive treasure that we do not know about, or a defensive space. It is said that Master Dan Kong once went to the interior of the astral souls and destroyed one of their research. The result of that research is said to be a space treasure with the goal of carrying people. Although Master Dan Kong successfully destroyed the research, they still kept some half-finished products. That thing is called the Space-Destroying Tower. Chapter 964. According to the information we have on Zhuo, the principal of the Hidden Dragon High School, Yi Changqing, owns such a Tower of Annihilation. If Yi Changqing gave his Tower of Annihilation to Zhuo, and if the information is correct, the main reason why Zhuo was able to avoid this disaster was that he escaped into the Tower of Annihilation in time, which has the ability to accommodate living people. The elegant and handsome middle-aged military officer said calmly, "For now, we haven't found anything." The vital signs collection device also didn't find any vital signs of Zhuo. However, I estimate that Zhuo couldn't have been killed by the explosion. Whether it was his cultivation or the combat strength he displayed, it shouldn't have been so. Therefore, I'm more inclined to believe that he has the Tower of Annihilation that belonged to the principal of the Hidden Dragon High School, Yi Changqing. Pass down the order. The entire army is to search the land, mud, and mountain rock within a radius of 5,000 meters to confirm the existence of such a small tower. Search according to the depth of the explosion. The deepest position underground is 120 meters. If you find it, don't act rashly. Immediately gather the suicide squad and directly self-destruct it. Okay. Thousands of martial artists in the army began to search closely. General Lei, you're indeed the brains of the military. You're far-sighted and wise. Commander, you flatter me. I'm just a little more cautious out of habit. General Lei smiled faintly, but his gaze didn't relax at all. It had to be said that if Swishaoduo didn't have the Tower of Annihilation, or if the Tower of Annihilation was still in its initial state, he would have been directly calculated by General Lei. He would have been doomed at every step. This person was the descendant of the Lei family, Lei Bao, one of the 12 great shamans. He was also one of the most outstanding people among the younger generation of the Lei family. At a young age, he had already been promoted to a deputy in the army. Aside from the fact that his cultivation base was only at the god-reigning realm, he was not inferior to the generals who had fought on the border for many years in all other aspects. If Swishaoduo escapes, and we can't find any traces of him, then what is the next place where he will most likely appear? The Legion commander knew that although he was the leader in name, he was actually just a supporting role for General Lei. Not only was his family background something he could not afford to offend, but he was also truly capable. He was not just an armchair strategist. To be able to have such a life experience was already a blessing for him and his family. As long as he followed this Deputy Legion commander, he would be able to achieve meteoric success in the future without any obstacles. For a second-rank Legion like his to have such an opportunity was already a rare opportunity. There was no such thing as suppression or competition. The name of the Lei family was enough to make all military generals shrink back on the path of competition. If Swishaoduo is safe from this wave of explosions, he will most likely return to the initial point of explosion, which is the direction of the series of explosions that he deliberately set off. After the series of explosions, that area will be the safest place to ambush. Then, he will create chaos over there again, creating layers of fog for our judgment. Then, he will turn back here and continue to advance towards this area. General Lei Jiuxiao pondered and said, "Just now, he set off the explosions over there and came here directly. This means one thing. That is, this is the distance that Swishaoduo can travel with ease. He can fly over from there, and this distance will not affect him at all. He can go into full combat mode at any time." This is a person's thought process. If I were Swishaoduo, if his reputation is true, then there is a high probability that he would make such a choice. Lei Jiuxiao said indifferently. And what we need to do is to go up a little further from here and set up another ambush. But this time, the explosives from below are no longer of any use. Then how should we set it up? With the power of modern technology, this is already the limit. Facts have also proven that it is extremely difficult to hurt an expert like Swishaoduo. Then, the following arrangements will have to focus on the Suicide Squad's self-destruction. Lei Jiuxiao's elegant face was filled with pity. Let the Suicide Squad move. Prepare 50 people. Prepare a pinnacle of the Guixian level. When Swishaoduo appears, overdraw your life force to hold him back. You only need to hold him back for half a minute, or even 10 seconds. Then 50 people will gather together and self-destruct at the same time. It will be enough to kill him. Blow him up. In order to complete the mission, blow up this pinnacle of the Guixian level as well. Lei Jiuxiao sighed softly. I will be in charge of the arrangements for the descendants of these 51 people and their families. As for this Guixian, I will be in charge of getting him the highest medal of the Umno Alliance's 12 great witch statues. Hearing such conditions, the Legion commander Yu Meng's eyes lit up. He had an impulse. The 12 great witch statues could guarantee that his descendants would receive the same training opportunities as the direct descendants of the 12 great witches, the same resources, and the same brilliant future. At this moment, even the Legion commander had the impulse to compete for the chance to self-destruct. This self-destruction was too fucking worth it for the long term. The moment Swishaoduo hid in the Annihilation Tower, he could still hear the earth-shattering roar outside. He could not help but feel his heart pounding in fear. A huge life force field suddenly opened up. This kind of life force field that required a warrior's life force field to open up was spread out like it was worthless here. Seeing this scene, Swishaoduo cursed in his heart. Fuck, this is too inhumane. Life force field can actually be used like this. Aren't you afraid of wasting it? I'm just a kid. It's better for you to save this power, to deal with the masters, that he didn't dare to go up anymore. He turned parallel and went back to the place where he had rushed up just now. Because of the explosion below, rocks were constantly rolling down from above, and the continuous meteors above his head were also constantly smashing down, causing the originally shaky places to show signs of collapsing. And the UMNO Alliance soldiers who were searching there were all very careful. Even so, there were occasionally people who were directly smashed down because of the collapses. Although the cultivation of the people present didn't care about this, but there was still a lot of swearing and cursing. All the soldiers in the world were the same. The soldiers of the Wizard Alliance were the same as the soldiers of Star Soul Realm. The moment they opened their mouths were filled with vulgarities. They did not repeat the same words for a long time, and their ability to curse was rather impressive. But the places where there was an ambush above, they still didn't destroy it as usual. Swishaoduo hurried down. Chapter 965. There were fewer people on this side compared to the other side. They still maintained their energy state and rushed upwards like a whirlwind. After rushing up about 1,000 meters, they encountered the life force field again. However, it was much weaker than the previous encounter. Zhuoxiao's mind raced. He decided to deactivate his energy state and perform the move of man and sword as one, rushing up 1,300 meters. Zhuoxiao's fearless charge caused a series of explosions, but all of them sounded behind him. Zhuoxiaoduo is here. Above, more than 500 military martial artists heard the commotion and rushed over to meet the attack head-on. Each of them looked fierce and determined. Zhuoxiaoduo looked at the other party's posture and instantly realized that they were here to play a game of self-destruction with him. Who am I to fall for such evil tricks? His sword aura surged again, and he suddenly slashed 30 times. In the process of the magnificent sword light, at least 70 to 80 people on the opposite side were silently minced into minced meat. However, Zhuoxiaoduo roared again. I'll fight you to the death. After saying that, he leaped up. However, when he was in mid-air, he turned into energy again and dodged in a roundabout way. He forced the enemy to face him head-on and did not give them the chance to self-destruct. However, Zhuoxiaoduo underestimated the sensitivity of military martial artists and their reaction speed. Even though a considerable part of his movement was out of the enemy's calculation and out of the enemy's attack range, there were still some parts that were predicted by the enemy. As soon as he moved forward, he collided head-on with a strong and viscous life force field. Zhuoxiaoduo knew that it was not good. He hurriedly blasted out the mental strength that he had prepared in advance to guard against any unexpected changes. Suddenly, more than 30 UMNO Alliance masters around him spat out blood and fell straight down. The life force field that they had constructed with their life force source was swept away by Zhuoxiaoduo's strong mental strength and shattered. This was the most direct and purest kind of extreme confrontation. The stronger the victor, the weaker the loser. There were no tricks or luck involved. The experts of the UMNO Alliance who had been sent flying were all in a state of unconsciousness. Even if they woke up in the future, it was inevitable that their source would be damaged. Their path of martial arts would no longer have the slightest possibility of moving forward. However, their efforts were not in vain. Instead, they received immediate returns. Two tall Guixian realm martial artists had already taken advantage of the moment when Zhuoxiaoduo's mental energy exploded and retreated, one on the left and one on the right, to entangle him. The faces of these two peak returnants, profound realm cultivators, were filled with determination. Light flickered all over their bodies. That was the sign that they had raised their cultivation to the extreme, ready to self-destruct at any time. Zhuoxiaoduo did not dare to be careless. He immediately used his unorthodox body movements to dodge, not giving the two a chance to get close to him and self-destruct. The spirit cat sword also emitted sword energy, its light flashing as it forced the two mysterious realm experts 10 meters away. You want to use self-destruction to deal with me? You have to have this opportunity first. The two mysterious realm experts' faces showed a trace of determination. The two of them did not have the opportunity to self-destruct. Suddenly, The two of them let out a long howl and rushed over with all their might. Zuoxiao Duo's heart was filled with shock as he quickly dodged. The spirit cat sword's sharpness had already chopped off half of an Gui Xian expert's body, but this person was truly valiant. With his remaining hand, he firmly held onto the spirit cat sword's edge. On his hand, there was a pair of strange gloves that were extremely tough. At this juncture, they had successfully entangled the spirit cat sword. Heavenly Witch Copper. Zuoxiao Duo roared. The gloves of the opponent were actually made of Heavenly Witch Copper wire. No wonder they were so tough. Boom. Chi chi chi. The sword energy exploded again. The spirit cat sword displayed its might and instantly crushed the hand and the gloves. However, the other person was already within 3 meters of him. Zuoxiao Duo roared and continued to retreat. The sword light flashed and cut the body of the person in half from his lower abdomen. This sword had its own secret. Even if he was determined to self-destruct, he still had to have the dantian to self-destruct. Zuoxiao Duo's sword had already destroyed the dantian of the other mysterious realm expert's lower abdomen. Even if the other person still had the strength to attack, he was destined to not be able to self-destruct. This was a wonderful way to deal with self-destruction. It had to be said that Zuoxiao Duo's way of dealing with the situation was perfect. Not only did he kill 2 people, but he also completely eliminated the possibility of self-destruction. However, to Zuoxiao Duo's surprise, the other person's dantian was already destroyed, and he only had one last breath of yuan qi left. There was no hope of self-destruction. However, he still took advantage of this opportunity to grab the spirit cat sword with both hands and charged over. Zuoxiao Duo's heterodox body movement technique was used again. The moment his wrist shook violently, the person's body had already turned into minced meat and flew out. However, the 2 mysterious realm experts had sacrificed their lives to create a binding effect. The surrounding area was already surrounded by 50 people. Zuoxiao Duo knew that things were not going well. Just as he was about to fly up into the sky above Lone Bamboo Mountain, an order had already been given. Explode! The 50 people who were charging forward in the circle all stopped abruptly and turned to self-destruction at the same time. They didn't even say a single word. 50 people had collectively self-destructed. Damn! Zuoxiao Duo groaned. At the moment when the white light flashed, he suddenly flashed into the Tower of Annihilation and disappeared into the void. Boom! Countless mountain rocks flew up and almost flew hundreds of miles away. Half of Lone Bamboo Mountain was directly destroyed by this shocking explosion. An even larger mushroom cloud rose into the air, rolling and rolling as it soared into the sky. Countless Umno Alliance soldiers raised their hands and saluted at the same time with tears in their eyes. Lei Jiuxiao and the army commander both flew up at the same time, because the mountain peak below them had already collapsed from the explosion. The 2 of them also had tears in their eyes, the rims of their eyes red. The 50 brothers had all turned into a loud rumble in an instant. Zuoxiao Duo. Is he dead? The army commander gritted his teeth. I'm afraid he's not dead yet. Lei Jiuxiao sighed and said, although the 2 pinnacle Guixian experts successfully tied down Zuoxiao Duo and gave us a chance, they did not really make Zuoxiao Duo reveal any openings. Besides the fact that Zuoxiao Duo's sword skills are superb, and his quick reflexes, more importantly, the sword in Zuoxiao Duo's hand is really a rare divine sword, unparalleled in its sharpness. Even the 2 pairs of sky witchcraft copper wire gloves that I gave were not able to trap Zuoxiao Duo's sword. This is really a big mistake. However, Zuoxiao Duo must not be feeling well either. Even if there is that Tower of Annihilation, with the current situation, withstanding such an explosion at such a close distance is still difficult. Lei Jiuxiao immediately ordered, everyone, use your life force field to sense the point of self-destruction of our brothers, within a radius of 2,000 meters. Yes. At the moment when the 50 brothers sacrificed their lives for a righteous cause, no one cared about their life force origin energy. Countless warriors of the Umno Alliance all had tears in their eyes as they tried their best to release their life force origin energy. They connected with the life force origin energy of the brothers beside them, linking with each other continuously, forming a huge inescapable net that covered all directions, covering everything. Lei Jiuxiao focused on the search in the field, but his face gradually turned pale as he sighed. This time, he had already put in a lot of effort, intending to finish the job in one fell swoop, but he still did not manage to kill Zhou Xiaoduo. At this point in the battle, the elite strength of his army had been used up, and there was no more ability to stop Zhou Xiaoduo. At least, it was impossible to organize another self-destruction of such a scale, and such a powerful lineup. Suicide squads were ultimately the minority, and to be able to form such a team was already too much. Zhou Xiaoduo fell into the Tower of Annihilation, and spat out a mouthful of blood, his face as pale as paper. This was the first time he had been so seriously injured since he started cultivating. This is really, too. Zhou Xiaoduo sighed with a pale face, but he still resisted the urge to curse and murmured, "Too heroic. Such an earth-shattering explosion, it's breathtaking." These warriors of the Umno Alliance had fought with him in such a heroic manner, filling Zhou Xiaoduo's heart with admiration. Against such an enemy, no matter what, he could not curse. Cursing such a heroic warrior was simply an insult to himself. This time, it was fortunate that he had dodged quickly, and because he had seen that the situation was not good, he had not tried to collect the rings of the two Xian returning martial artists. If he had been just a little bit greedy, the self-destruction of these 50 people, even if he had the Tower of Annihilation, would have been enough to kill him in one fell swoop. That was the self-detonation of 50 experts above the royal god realm, the ultimate self-detonation of their lives and souls. Too ruthless. Astral souls are not the only ones with heroes, and astral souls are not the only ones with heroic warriors. Such an enemy is really worthy of respect. Zhou Xiaoduo's heart was filled with emotion. After experiencing this personally, he felt more and more the enormous pressure that the front line of the Sun Moon Pass had to bear. Because what he was facing was only a second-grade army, nothing more. And it was not a first-grade army that had been fighting at the Sun Moon Pass all year round. For a second-rate army to be able to achieve such a feat, how could Zhou Xiaoduo not be shocked? Feeling the overwhelming pain in his internal organs, Zhou Xiaoduo hurriedly took out medicine and swallowed it. Then he consecutively drank 2 bottles of spirit-restoring water, and used the best quality jade of astral souls to cultivate and heal his injuries. He swallowed a few heavenly treasured fruits. His complexion rapidly improved at a speed visible to the naked eye. I might as well take this opportunity to cultivate, and when I break through to the god reigning level, my chances of survival will be higher. Zhou Xiaoduo deeply felt the inadequacy of his own strength. If only I could break through to the sky realm now. I don't know if Nian Mao and the others would know that I encountered this here. Fortunately, the old man was looking for me and not Nian Mao. Otherwise, Nian Mao would definitely be in danger. Zhou Xiaoduo's face was filled with joy. Nian Mao doesn't have the Tower of Annihilation. This is the true meaning of a battle. Compared to this experience, the previous battles were simply child's play, like children playing house. Zhou Xiaoduo stopped thinking about nonsense and quickly entered a state of cultivation where he forgot about everything around him. Just as Zhou Xiaoduo was being taken away by Lei Changtian in Fenghai City, Fang Yinhua had nothing to do. As usual, he sat in the auction house and used poker cards to read his fortune. Chapter 966. Fang Yinhua was an old bachelor. Because he was afraid of implicating himself, he didn't even find a wife. Therefore, there was no need for him to celebrate the new year. Furthermore, with his status, it wasn't appropriate for him to go to someone else's house to celebrate the new year. It's all spades and plum blossoms. This is somewhat unlucky. Fang Yinhua pretended to read his fortune. In reality, he didn't believe it at all. He was just playing around to pass time. Suddenly, a large limousine stopped at the entrance. A faint powerful aura caused Fang Yinhua to raise his head in surprise. It can't be that they're here to look for me, right? Then a middle-aged man, a beautiful woman, 2 elderly people, and 2 children walked out of the limousine. Looking at the signboard of Barodo Auction House, the middle-aged man stood there in a daze for a while. After tidying his clothes, he walked in. After interrogating him, the staff on duty brought him in and saw Fong Yinhua. "Are you Brother Fong?" The middle-aged man cupped his fists respectfully. Fong Yinhua's back was wet. His scalp was about to explode. The aura of the person in front of him was so powerful. "I'm about to reach the returning profound realm. In front of this person, I'm actually completely suppressed. Could it be that he's a Sky Realm expert? What's the matter? What business could a Sky Realm powerhouse have with me? Aren't you overestimating me? May I ask who you are?" Fong Yinhua composed himself. "I'm Guan Shanha, under the orders of young Master Zhua. I'm here to report to Brother Fong." The middle-aged man took out a letter and respectfully handed it to Fong Yinhua. "Brother Fong, please take a look." Fong Yinhua instantly focused all his attention. He raised his guard and his entire cultivation base. A wisp of qi had already locked onto the window. Behind the window, there was an alley. There were 8 turns in the alley, and each of them had a hidden door. As long as he made a turn or 2, he would be able to enter the escape tunnel that he had dug out during this period of time. He would be able to escape quickly and escape with his life. Then, he condensed his aura and took the letter. But when he opened the letter and read it, he immediately felt relieved. On the letter it said, "Anu Anua, I've assigned you an assistant come bodyguard. Many, 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 many." The inscription was a strangely shaped knife. After he finished drawing the knife, he seemed to have accidentally wiped it, causing the knife to look a little blurry. After Fong Yinhua read the letter, he felt completely relieved. He then laughed out loud. "So it's Brother Guan. Brother Guan, you've graced us with your presence. Apologies for not going out to welcome you. Little brother. Haha, I'm used to being cautious. Ha ha ha." Guan Shanha smiled bitterly. "You were about to jump out of the window just now. Did you really think I didn't see it?" However, he naturally could not mention this part. Guan Shanha was very clear about his own situation. From now on, the lives of his family were undoubtedly tied to this fatty. Zhua Xiaodua was still worried about him, so he sent him to this extremely cautious and wretched guy. Rather than calling it an inspection, it would be more accurate to call it surveillance. To put it simply, it was the so-called probation period, the internship period. Whether or not he could stay and work for a long time would depend on his subsequent performance. "Then I will have to rely on Brother Fong in the future," Guan Shanha said humbly and respectfully. You're welcome. Fong Yinhua was overjoyed. He did not expect that he would have a Sky Realm expert as his bodyguard. This level had soared all of a sudden. This happiness had really come too suddenly. Are these Brother Guan's family members? Yes, they are. These are my parents. These are my father-in-law and mother-in-law. This is my wife, and these are my children. Guan Shanha introduced them one by one and smiled. I moved my family to Fenghai. In the future, I will be relying on Brother Fong's protection. Fong Yinhua was even more delighted. Brother Guan, you're too polite. No problem. Brother Guan, do you have any requests for accommodation? How about this? There are 2 empty villas near the villa I'm staying in. The space is quite spacious. Brother Guan, you can stay there. If you find another place you like in the future, you can find another place. Won't I be disturbing Brother Fong? Not at all. If Brother Guan has no objections, then listen to me. Fong Yinhua was very enthusiastic. When he bought the villas, he bought 10 of them in one go. All of them were well decorated. In the beginning, he even took turns living in them every day to ensure his safety. Now that Guan Shanha was here, he had a Sky Realm expert as his bodyguard. Naturally, he had to settle the villas as close to him as possible. He had only caught a glimpse of Guan Shanha earlier, so he didn't take a closer look. Now that he took a closer look, he realized that not only was Guan Shanha a Skysor Realm expert, but his father-in-law also possessed a frightening cultivation. Even if he wasn't as strong as Guan Shanha, he was still at the peak of the returning profound realm. However, his 5 colors were slightly uneven, as if he had suffered some internal injuries that had yet to recover. Not to mention Guanshanha. If this old man wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his palm. Compared to his life, a villa was nothing. Money was just a worldly possession that was not worth mentioning. All these years, he had paid tribute to young Master Zhua. If converted into money, it would be worth tens of billions. What Master Feng lacked the most now was money. The entire Fenghai city was his private bank. Whatever he wanted, he would just steal it. Under Feng Yinua's enthusiastic insistence, Guanshanha and his family finally settled down. Then, Feng Yinua began to arrange a banquet to welcome them. In short, it was an extremely luxurious and sincere reception. While they were drinking, Feng Yinua jokingly said, "This is young Master Zhua's biggest logistics base. Young Master Zhua has always been very attentive to this place. When he has nothing to do, he would come here to inspect it. Also, the head butler comes here almost every day. That's only because it's the new year. If it's a normal day..." Feng Yinua's words sounded very normal. However, he did not need to use a hammer to sound the drums. Guanshanha immediately became alert. Feng Yinua was trying to warn him and show him the importance of his position. He could not help but be even more careful. In short, both the host and the guests were happy and harmonious. Everyone was still busy celebrating the new year. As for Zhua Xiaoduo, who had not shown his face for a few days, almost no one noticed him. Only Li Chenglong was puzzled. Where did Zhua Xiaoduo go? He had not seen him for a few days. And he even missed the New Year's red packet. Did he go back to his hometown? Hence, he gave Hu Ruoyan a call and found out that Zhua Xiaoduo had indeed returned to Phoenix City a few days ago. He even had a meal at Hu Ruoyan's house. After confirming this news, Li Chenglong could not help but feel relieved. It seemed that Zhua was really not in Fenghai now. He just did not know if he was using this as an excuse to avoid the boss red packet. Well, according to a certain someone's stingy personality, this was not only very possible, it was very likely. Li Chenglong let go of his worries and focused on his cultivation. Previously, he had just broken through to the god-reigning realm and had time to stabilize his realm. Now that it was a critical moment, he had to work hard to improve. In between his cultivation, he would occasionally guide the work of Zhua Shuai's company, think about the arrangements of his brothers, and also check on the war situation, and study the direction of the war. On this day, Li Chenglong browsed the internet as usual. As usual, he jumped over the wall to check the UMNO Alliance and the Dao League. However, at this moment an accident occurred. The process of jumping over the wall at the Dao League was as easy as usual, but the website at the UMNO Alliance could not be opened no matter how hard he tried. After checking around, it turned out that there was an attack that caused the server to completely collapse. Now, it was under repair. Li Chenglong did not pay much attention to this. After all, things like network collapses were very common on the internet. Cultivate. Cultivate. Li Chenglong entered his palace again. At this moment, Xiang Bing was also cultivating inside. Hence, Li Chenglong stepped forward and, without caring about anything else, first practiced the dual cultivation divine skill of 56,000 words. Then, naturally, the two of them were so tired that they felt like mud and had a good sleep. Then they began to cultivate in the ordinary sense. On the other side, Yumoyan and Duguyener joined forces. After fighting with this demonic beast that was almost beyond the Demon King level for 4 days, they finally killed it. Then, they found a mine full of astral souls jade in the demonic beast's cave. Normally, these astral souls jade mines could be considered a considerable profit. However, when the two of them were digging the mine wantonly, they accidentally discovered a cave of an ancient almighty, that the two of them were pleasantly surprised. Side by side, they entered to explore. On the way back, Li Zhongming also encountered a fortuitous encounter. The process was comparable to the treatment of a protagonist in a novel. On the way back, he encountered several king-level demonic beasts fighting. Out of curiosity, he snuck in to observe. Then, he saw 6 king-level demonic beasts fighting desperately. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. However, he did not know why. Finally, in the midst of the chaotic battle, a mountain collapsed. Suddenly, a ray of light shone out. As for the 6 demonic beasts, although their combat strength had been greatly reduced because of the battle, they did not suffer any fatal injuries and still had their foundation. However, when the light suddenly shone on them, they swayed for a while and fell to the ground one after another, and fell asleep. For safety's sake, Li Zhongming stayed far away from the place where the demonic beasts fought. He was at least a few thousand meters away, but even so he was still affected by the light. However, he had the Dream Divine technique in his body, so he was more resistant to the light. He barely held on and did not fall asleep. After a few revolutions, he rushed over to take a look at the source of the light. He found that the source of the light was a small bell. The moment Li Zhongming laid his eyes on the bell, he felt that his spirit was shaken. How could he not know that this was a rare treasure? Moreover, it was quite compatible with his Dream Divine technique. He could not help but be overjoyed and quickly put it away. Looking at the 6 king-level demonic beasts, they were still sleeping soundly. Naturally, he raised his hand and slashed down. I'm rich. Chapter 967. Shangjing. Zhua Xiaoyan arrived and destroyed the 3rd prince's mansion. However, she still couldn't find Jun Changkong. She didn't know where he went either. She only felt frustrated. How could he run away so fast? I'm so angry. She was summoned by the boss of the 9 Heavens Pavilion. Jun Changkong has been grounded by the imperial family. This incident involves the military and the imperial family. In my opinion, why don't we be more magnanimous? Be more magnanimous? Zhua Xiaoyan didn't want to give up. However, she didn't dare to disobey her boss. However, he still brought it up. If there are any other related movements, then it means that they are seeking death. I will definitely kill them. No, I won't. I promise you that if there are any more incidents, you can do whatever you want. The boss smiled bitterly. Now Jun Changkong was really grounded. He was even sent to a place that even he didn't know. It would be difficult for Jun Changkong to come out and cause trouble or meet him again. However, the imperial family made a prompt decision this time. Zhua Xiaoyan returned to the spirit reigning area unhappily. As the boss, she called everyone for a meeting. From now on, pay close attention to the 3rd prince's mansion and all his confidants, subordinates, and relatives. If there are any suspicious incidents, report it immediately. Zhua Xiaoyan gave the order. Ahem. Boss. Someone stood up. Monitoring the imperial family is beyond our authority. We need to. Zhua Xiaoyan glanced at them coldly. A cold aura filled the air. First, I didn't say monitor. I said, pay attention. Do you understand? Who asked you to monitor? Shouldn't you pay more attention? Second, who allowed you to speak when I gave the order? She waved her hand and a cold aura spread. The 2 of them immediately turned into ice sculptures. They were frozen there, dumbfounded. Does anyone else have any opinions about paying attention to the 3rd prince's mansion? Zhua Xiaoyan said indifferently. If you do, just say it. No. Everyone said in unison. They all looked at the 2 fellows sympathetically. They estimated that this cold would last for at least 2 days. These 2 fellows would have a hard time. Big sister obviously wants to give the 3rd prince a hard time. And you actually came out to sing a different tune. If I don't freeze you, who will I freeze? What's more, this word game is well played. We're just paying attention. Ha! There's been a lot of work to do recently. Everyone, please do your best. Zhua Xiaoyan walked away expressionlessly. Everyone understood tacitly. Yes, I will definitely do my best to monitor the 3rd prince. I don't want to be frozen. Zhua Xiaoyan went back to her room and took out her phone to call Zhua Xiaoduo, but the call did not go through. However, she did not think much of it. After all, this kind of situation was very common. Anyone who had the Tower of Annihilation and a lot of cultivation resources would be able to cultivate in seclusion all year round. Of course, she could not reach him through her phone. After leaving the usual message, he went into seclusion to prepare to break through to the returning profound realm. He had to speed up. He couldn't let the puppy catch up to him. This was his bottom line, and he absolutely could not break it. Somewhere in Shangjing, a message was sent out again. The UMNO Alliance received a secret report again and translated it according to the secret method. The Star of Calamity has arrived. With the protection of the crepe myrtle star, it shows that there is an expert by his side. The heavenly kings are no match for him. If you try your best, even the heavenly kings will be in danger. It was still a drawing of a white cloud. It was obvious that this spy was hinting that no matter what, they could not let Swishaoduo go back. Their desire to kill Swishaoduo was so strong. Seeing this secret report, the few heavenly kings immediately broke out in cold sweat. That Swishaoduo was actually protected by someone. More importantly, the heavenly kings were no match for him. In other words, the person protecting Swishaoduo was actually a grand magus? Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? Fortunately, they did not send Fei Tian. Otherwise, no, this was too big. They had to report it. If the other party had such a person, there had to be a grand magus in charge. But now, all the grand magi had gone into seclusion. Well, there seemed to be one more who had not gone into seclusion. The heavenly kings looked at each other. You go. No, you go. I'm not going. Rock, paper, scissors. The heavenly kings' faces were pale. Although it was a place of their own people, that place, they really did not dare to go. After an intense round of rock, paper, scissors, a heavenly king was finally defeated. He looked as if his parents had died. I'm too unlucky. Thus, this heavenly king gathered his courage and went to the poison hall. This was the place of the grand magi. Almost no one was allowed to come close. Within 1,000 miles, there was not even a living mouse, let alone a human. If there was no such urgent matter, this heavenly king would not be willing to come here, even if he had applied for the final battle at the Sun Moon Pass. Although there was no danger, it was too terrifying. Sir, I have an important matter to discuss with you. Please. A hole opened in the poison array, and let this heavenly king in. What's the matter? Sir now. In such a situation, do you think you can? This heavenly king was trembling with fear. He was afraid that a poisonous fog would spurt out as he spoke. Hee. I'll go take a look, roar. The Grand Magi was very excited and surprised that there was an unforeseen event. Fuck, there's finally something for me to do. After all, there's something to do. I've really been bored out of my mind during this period of time. Previously, they didn't let me go to the Starlight Mountain Range Ruins trial. They also didn't let me go to the meeting of the Grand Magi. Those fellows also secretly hid it from me. Now, there's finally something happening in the UMNO Alliance, and they even took the initiative to look for me. If I don't go now, when will I go? Roar. I'm going. The Grand Magi impatiently turned into a ball of black light and rushed into the sky. The heavenly king who was reporting outside was dumbfounded. My lord, I haven't finished my report yet. Why are you leaving? You can leave. But if I go out? Fuck, how am I going to get out of this poison array? At Lone Bamboo Mountain, Lei Jiuxiao and the others were making their last line of defense. Even though Lei Jiuxiao already knew in his heart that the army he was in no longer had the strength to stop Swishaoduo, he still had to make one last effort. Especially after many fruitless searches, Lei Jiuxiao's heart was already certain. Swishaoduo was definitely not dead. He was just waiting for a suitable time. Or perhaps he was in a hiding place to recover his strength. Lei Jiuxiao was very confident that it was impossible for Swishaoduo to not be injured at all when 500 people self-destructed. Even if he was a peak Skysaur cultivator, under such circumstances, he would at least be seriously injured. I've already tried my best to overestimate Swishaoduo. I've taken out all the forces that can self-destruct. If you're still not injured at all, then the so-called seal now is just a piece of cake for you. You can leave easily. But if you're not injured, why haven't you come out for so long? You should know that the time after the self-destruction is the easiest time for you to break through the seal. Therefore, you must have been injured. But whether Swishaoduo is seriously injured or not, it's hard to say. Are you confident? Yu Meng asked. Not at all. Lei Jiuxiao sighed and said, I have already sent out the news, asking all the experts who are hunting Swishaoduo to go to the Lone Bamboo City and wait. I have also informed the 6 armies that are currently forming an encirclement that Swishaoduo might break through our defense line, asking them to prepare. Even the self-destruction of 50 of our men of sacrifice couldn't kill Swishaoduo. With the scattered forces sent by the various clans, it's even more impossible to stop Swishaoduo. Now, our greatest hope lies on the 6 armies. Lei Jiuxiao sighed deeply. His face was filled with unconcealable disappointment and dejection. This was the greatest merit, and it was already destined to brush past him. That can't be right? That Swishaoduo is actually that strong? Yu Meng was in disbelief. Let's wait and see, Lei Jiuxiao said. As long as Swishaoduo dares to appear in our encirclement, breaking through Lone Bamboo Mountain will be a piece of cake. There won't be any obstacles. He turned to look at Yu Meng and said, although this is a huge blow to our morale, General Yu, if Swishaoduo appears again, General Yu, you should command from afar. If Swishaoduo gets killed while breaking through the encirclement, it would be a real loss for our army. Yu Meng took a deep breath. His face flushed red, but he thought carefully and said, all right, I'll listen to you. Don't be unconvinced. Lei Jiuxiao patted Yu Meng's shoulder. When dealing with such a peerless genius, no matter how careful you are, it's only right. This kind of person is destined to be the chosen one. Even if he dies prematurely, he won't die without paying a price. The more talented he is, the more people will have to be buried with him when he dies. Not only will they have to be buried with him, but they will also have to seek revenge after he dies. This will be extremely shocking and cruel. Lei Jiuxiao laughed bitterly and said, why is Swishaoduo the #1 person on the human token? This was the biggest price that could be foreseen. Swishaoduo wasn't famous before, but when his name appeared on the human token, he surpassed everyone and became the #1 person. The reason for this, to put it bluntly, is extremely terrifying. This ambush, we planned layer after layer and exhausted all our manpower, but we still couldn't kill Swishaoduo as we wished. It looks like we didn't make a big contribution, and it's a pity, but from another point of view, I'm also relieved. General, think about it. If Swishaoduo really dies in our hands, will the Lei family be able to withstand the revenge that will follow? It's still uncertain. But the other direct beneficiary, General, you can't possibly withstand it. Lei Jiuxiao laughed bitterly. Yu Meng was shocked to the point of being dumbfounded. Even the Lei family may not be able to withstand it? General Lei Yu, are you joking? Chapter 968. Lei Jiuxiao shook his head. Joking? Has the general ever seen me make a joke? If I say I don't have the confidence, then I really don't have the confidence. Even if our Lei family can withstand it, we will have to pay a considerable price. A price that will hurt the entire family. He pondered, then slowly said, after all, this is the first person of the human favor order. He originally wanted to explain the meaning behind the surname Zhua. But after looking at Yu Meng, he did not say anything. Yu Meng's current position, current status, current cultivation, was not at the stage where he knew this surname. He was not qualified. He was not qualified in any of the aspects. The most important thing was that this person was not absolutely reliable, especially his mouth. Once the words that should not be said were spread out, many people who were about to participate in the hunt would not dare to come. Time passed little by little. It was noon. Swishaoduo still had not come out. Lei Jiuxiao did not dare to lower his guard in the slightest. He raised his head to look at the sun. It was already high up in the sky, so he pulled Yu Meng and moved another 500 meters to the side, making way for the path to the peak. He remembered the information about Swishaoduo very clearly. Swishaoduo cultivated the Flaming Sun scripture. At noon, his battle strength would be slightly stronger than usual. Perhaps in the eyes of many people, they would overlook this slight difference, because this slight difference was not worth much. But in the eyes of those who had a thorough understanding of power, they would definitely not overlook this slight difference, especially now that they were 8,000 meters above sea level. Sometimes, A slight change in temperature was enough to change the entire situation in such an environment. As a disciple of one of the top families in the UMNO alliance, Lei Jiuxiao was naturally familiar with this theory. He definitely would not, and did not dare to, be careless in the slightest. Noon. 12 o'clock sharp. When the sun shone the brightest, that the snow was dazzling because of the light, shining brightly. The entire mountain peak was like an illusion. A faint figure suddenly appeared. The moment this figure appeared, a magnificent scarlet glow erupted. Flames soared into the sky, and the heat instantly swept out, enveloping the nearby snow-covered mountain slope. That faint figure appeared in a powerful manner and charged forward. The snow melted, and the vegetation instantly withered. In the blink of an eye, he had already advanced 300 meters. The blood-curdling screams almost became a series of sounds. Along the way, all the UMNO Alliance martial artists were burned into charcoal, their bodies burning as they tumbled down. Seeing this, the 7 divine royal martial officers attacked at the same time. However, Zhou Xiaoduo did not dodge at all, nor did he use his sword. Using only his bare hands, he charged into the encirclement of the 7 people like a ball of fire. With a loud explosion, the 7 people screamed in pain, their bodies on fire flying in 7 different directions. This momentary block did not stop Zhou Xiaoduo at all, and he continued to break through the distance of more than 1,000 meters. Not enough. The pressure was not enough. What he wanted was an explosive breakthrough under extreme pressure. Then, at the moment of breakthrough, he would use the pressure to achieve the connection between man and heaven. His meridians would break through, and he would absorb the power of the enemy's attack. Then, he would rush forward on the path of divine royal martial artist. The 7 divine royal martial officers in front of him were far from the level of power that could make him feel the pressure. However, it did not matter. Above him, more than 100 UMNO Alliance soldiers had already appeared. They rushed forward together and launched a death charge towards him without fear of death. Zhou Xiaoduo roared, and the blazing flames on his body expanded another 10 meters. He did not dodge, but met them head-on. As soon as he came into contact with them, a series of blood-curdling screams rang out. Everyone's hair and clothes were on fire the moment they came into contact with him. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of countless spiritual forces colliding rang out almost continuously. At this moment, Zhou Xiaoduo also felt the long-lost sense of oppression. It was a heavy feeling that was mixed with blood, wrapped in cruelty, and wrapped in the crisis of life and death. Zhou Xiaoduo raised his head and roared. The power of the Flaming Sun Sutra, which had already reached its limit, rose sharply again. A gust of clear air appeared and rushed to the 9 heavens. It was a magnificent spectacle and captivating. With another loud boom, a huge whirlpool quickly formed above Zhou Xiaoduo's head. The magnificent power from the sun increased several times at this moment. The light was unprecedentedly bright and dazzling as it rushed down and focused on Zhou Xiaoduo's head. The surrounding spiritual energy also gathered in the direction of a tsunami. All these strange phenomena were completed in the blink of an eye. Lei Jiuxiao, who was watching and commanding from the side, suddenly changed his expression. He pulled Yu Meng and flew to the other side. Run! Leave this place as soon as possible. We have really encountered a monster this time. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His face was full of disbelief. There was also a sense of loss after being shocked. How could this be? How could there be such a monster in this world? Commander Yu Meng was also dumbfounded. There really is a ferocious person who can break through in the middle of a battle. This is too much of a monster. I have never seen this before. Lei Jiuxiao could no longer be bothered to talk to Yu Meng. He ordered as he ran, "Disperse! Disperse! Don't block him anymore. Let him pass. Let Zhou Xiaoduo pass." At this juncture, they had no choice but to disperse. Since the other party dared to choose such a time to make a breakthrough, and was not afraid of being disturbed and going berserk, there was only one possibility. He could absorb all the attack power and convert it into his own power at the moment of his breakthrough, and convert all the attacking power into power to break through. After breaking through in one go, He could use the attack to vent out the residual power of the attack, that if that really happened, none of the people who were besieging him would be able to survive. Lei Jiuxiao's order was extremely timely, and his decision was correct. If they could completely follow Lei Jiuxiao's order, although they wouldn't be able to stop Zhuo Xiaoduo from breaking out of the encirclement, the effect of his breakthrough would be greatly reduced. If they went forward to fight now, it would be a meaningless sacrifice. But now, at least for Zhuo Xiaoduo, it was too late, because he had already made all the preparations in the Tower of Annihilation. He had suppressed his state to the point where he could no longer suppress it for the 56th time. He had only rushed out when his inner yuan was about to go berserk, that the moment he came out, he came into contact with the spiritual energy of the outside world. The spiritual energy in his body had completely gone berserk. With another loud bang in the sky, a shadow seemed to appear. It was very illusory and unreal, but it was clear and fleeting. However, this scene clearly fell into the eyes of Lei Jiuxiao, who was not very far away. He was instantly dumbfounded and stunned on the spot. That's a divine consciousness projection. It's actually a divine consciousness projection. Zhuo Xiaoduo broke through to the God reigning level? But how could it be a God reigning level? How could he stop at the God reigning level? The divine consciousness projection was a very illusory thing. Only when a warrior's divine consciousness was strong enough would it appear, when he was breaking through, and under the condition of heaven-man connection. However, this kind of situation was extremely rare. Generally speaking, one would need to reach the God reigning level before they could start to come into contact with divine consciousness and control it. However, this was only a theory. In reality, more than 80% of God reigning level martial artists did not know what divine consciousness was. In fact, there were quite a number of Sky Realm martial artists who were at the pinnacle of the Sky Realm and breaking through to the Tao integration stage. They might not even be able to form a complete divine consciousness projection like Zhuo Xiaoduo's. Zhuo Xiaoduo's divine consciousness projection was not only clear on his face, but even his hair, clothes, and shoes could be seen clearly. Even if a Sky Realm martial artist were to break through to the Tao integration stage, a divine consciousness projection of this level would still be shocking. However, this was not the real reason for Lei Jiuxiao's shock. What truly shocked him was that Zhuo Xiaoduo's cultivation had just broken through to the God reigning level. Didn't that mean that Zhuo Xiaoduo was only at the pinnacle of the cloud transformation stage? As a pinnacle of the cloud transformation stage, he could easily kill a pinnacle of the profound returning stage cultivator. Two profound returning stage cultivators working together could not even self-detonate. They could not even harass him. After that, 50 people surrounded him and self-detonated. A mere pinnacle of the cloud transformation stage was able to escape unscathed and break through after a short period of concealment. What kind of godly maneuver was this? What kind of monster was Zhuo Xiaoduo? Was he still human? Under Lei Jiuxiao's shocked gaze, Zhuo Xiaoduo's divine consciousness projection disappeared in a flash. Following that, a gust of clear air rushed out from the top of his head. In that instant, the strength of his attack increased by several folds. His posture was still the same as before, and his attack power was still the same as before. However, the attribute of his strength had undergone a fundamental change. When the spirit cat sword reappeared, its magnificent sword light had turned into a jade color. It became even more profound and transparent. The moment the 100-meter sword light swept across, several people screamed and fell to the ground. As for the spiritual energy that was originally attacking Zhuo Xiaoduo, the moment Zhuo Xiaoduo broke through the formation of the spiritual energy vortex, it was immediately absorbed by the vortex. When it was spat out again, it had been completely transformed into Zhuo Xiaoduo's unstoppable attack. At this moment, the 100 people who participated in the attack, in addition to the 30 to 40 people who joined in later, felt as if their chests had been hit heavily. At the same time, their divine consciousnesses were being attacked. The pain was unbearable, as if their heads were about to split open. In an instant, everyone's faces were as pale as paper. Zhuo Xiaoduo let out a long howl. The spirit cat sword was waved to its heart's content. The dense sword light shone brightly, His advance was like cutting melons and vegetables. He rushed out a distance of 2,500 meters in a straight line. Behind him, there were broken limbs and broken bodies everywhere. Zhuoxiaoduo's body was like an illusion as he moved continuously in the air. The few experts who flew over to attack were all slashed back by his sword. Another long howl. Zhuoxiaoduo's tall and straight body stood on a protruding boulder at the top of the mountain. On the blade of the sword in his hand, a line of blood flowed down. Small red holes appeared on the snow under his feet. Chapter 969. Zhuoxiaoduo took a deep breath. His heart was exceptionally calm. The excitement of a breakthrough that he had anticipated did not appear. Instead, he was completely at peace. Because of the breakthrough, his sea of consciousness was rapidly expanding. Bai and Jiu swam happily within the sea of consciousness. They swam forward along the borders of the sea of consciousness. With the help of these crazy waves, the sea of consciousness expanded wherever the two little fellows swam, that he felt the power coursing through his body. His originally extremely violent true spirit qi was transformed into his meridians because of the sudden transformation. It was like a boundless and bottomless river that continued to swim calmly. However, Zhuoxiaoduo only needed to think about it. With just a thought, he could make that seemingly calm flow of water explode with a majestic force that could shake the heavens. Zhuoxiaoduo, who was standing on a large rock, turned his head and looked into the distance. He stared at Lei Jiuxiao and Yu Meng, who were 3,000 meters away. His gaze was like cold lightning. It was extremely menacing. Lei Jiuxiao and Yu Meng were clearly 3,000 meters away, but they both felt as if their cheeks had been abruptly pricked by burning needles. This was a pain that originated from the depths of their souls. It was extremely unbearable. Brother Zhua, you have already broken through all the blockades that we have set up. You are truly impressive. Brother Zhua, your journey will have nothing to do with us. Lei Jiuxiao smiled faintly and saluted from afar. He was refined and courteous. I am Lei Jiuxiao. I wish Brother Zhua a safe journey. Zhuoxiaoduo stood on the large rock. He could feel that the sky was almost filled with flying Dao integration cultivators' divine intents. His eyes flickered as he said calmly, Lei Jiuxiao. Not a bad plan. His previous 3 moves had probably been calculated by this person. If not for the fact that his absolute combat strength was insufficient, and that he had the hidden trump card of the space-destroying tower, he would have been in deep trouble this time. The Umno Alliance, which had always believed in its tyrannical strength, actually had such an intelligent person. They were indeed a galaxy of talents. Zhuoxiaoduo looked at Lei Jiuxiao. Killing intent involuntarily radiated from his body. Brother Zhua, you flatter me. Lei Jiuxiao said regretfully. I have already done my best, but it was all in vain. I was unable to keep Brother Zhua here. Zhuoxiaoduo laughed heartily. He pointed with his finger and said, It's easy to keep me here. 1 or 2 of the people up there can come down. Isn't that enough? Muffled groans could be heard from above. Clearly, there were already many Sky Soar realm, and even Dao integration stage experts gathered in the sky. Ha ha ha. Seniors, there's no need to snort. It's been hard on all of you to escort me all this way. Zhuoxiaoduo laughed and said, Now that I've reached the highest peak of Lone Bamboo Mountain, I'm looking down at the mountains and rivers, and the scenery is picturesque. Suddenly, I'm in the mood to recite a poem. The wind was chilly high up in the sky, but Zhuoxiaoduo was determined to provoke them. Naturally, he would resort to any means necessary. This bit of cold wind had no effect on him at all. I used to be frozen into a popsicle by Nian Nian Cat every day. Do you think I'm afraid of this cold? It had to be said that Zhuoxiaoduo was a little proud. It was the kind of pride that said, You don't understand my pride. If I can be frozen by Nian Nian Cat every day, can you? With this thought, he became more and more pleased with himself. His poetic mood was getting out of hand. Since he had already reached this point, how could he not be more unbridled? Just as everyone's eyes were about to spit fire, Zhuoxiaoduo struck a pose that made people want to beat him up 3,600 times. He slowly recited, When I first entered the mountains of the Umno Alliance, the roars of dragons and tigers filled the sky. With the Qingfeng sword in my hand, I stepped on the highest peak of the Wu people. With 1 against 10,000, I have nothing to fear. My heroic spirit is in my chest. Crossing 80,000 miles of the Umno Alliance is Master, Swa's #1 achievement. The sound of gnashing teeth could be heard continuously. How did this kid compose a poem? I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go down and beat this little bastard to death. Someone in the clouds was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. Take a break. If I could go down, I would have done so long ago. Another person's face turned purple with anger. Haven't you heard that the Dao Alliance lost a heavenly king because of this little bastard? And it was Patriarch Flood who did it himself. Do you dare to break the rules? Do you dare to break the rules set by Patriarch Flood? If you want to go down, I don't object. But I definitely won't allow our Umno Alliance to slap our own patriarch in the face. I'd rather wait for this kid to soar into the sky and challenge him to a duel. That's right. It's because of this. Fuck. I'm so angry. I used my inner vision just now. My liver is swollen from anger. A black-robed Dao integration stage cultivator said with a serious expression. You only saw this little bastard's despicableness, but you didn't see his talent. This little bastard, perhaps. He really is a peerless prodigy, who is even more talented and outstanding than Mo Yingfeng. Naturally, he's even more dangerous. The current situation is truly difficult to handle. If we don't send out a sky-level battle prowess, there's simply no one here who's a match for that brat. The only thing we can do is to watch him escape and swagger off. These words caused everyone to fall silent. This was the truth. Now there were only 2 ways to make Zhou Xiaoduo stay. First, the military blockade, and use human lives to kill him. Then the military formation would be used as a unit to self-destruct. Second, in a specific environment, the immolation token would be used to self-destruct consecutively, or in an orderly manner until he was dead. Judging from the current situation, nascent soul reigning stage cultivators were no longer a threat to him in a one-on-one battle. Everyone had seen the battle just now. Hundreds of people, 6 nascent soul reigning stage cultivators led the team, more than 30 soul reigning stage cultivators, and more than 100 soul transformation stage cultivators, were all killed by Zhou Xiaoduo in the blink of an eye. They didn't even have the chance to self-destruct. Was he really just a newly advanced soul reigning stage cultivator? Wasn't this a little too inconceivable? Let's report this situation first and let the heavenly kings think carefully about what to do and whether to break the rules of the immolation token. A group of Umno Alliance cultivators were worried sick. The immolation token was indeed a restriction that couldn't be avoided, especially now that Zhou Xiaoduo had caused a ruckus to the point where everyone knew about it. Although the Umno Alliance's external network communication had been completely cut off, it could only be said that ordinary people and ordinary martial artists wouldn't know about this matter. However, the higher-ups had no influence at all. The immolation token. Even Lei Chengtian's biggest reliance was the immolation token. The immolation token was created by the Flood Witch, and the Flood Witch was the arbiter of the immolation token. She had arbitrated several times. The Flood Witch herself was the highest authority in the Umno Alliance. This was the biggest restriction. If the Umno Alliance sent experts above the fairy realm to deal with Zhou Xiaoduo, then whether it was the Astral Souls or the Dao League, the Flood Witch would be ashamed. They probably didn't need to do much. The Flood Witch wouldn't be able to stand it if they casually said a few words. Flood, you set the rules yourself, but even your own people don't follow them. What are you going to do? The Dao League said. We didn't do anything over there, and you came over to kill a heavenly king. Now it's your turn. Are you going to kill a grand shaman, or are you going to apologize with your own death? The Astral Souls said, we made a move over here. You killed 36 demon monarchs, and beat up the demon ancestor, until he disappeared for thousands of years. Now it's your turn. How many do you want to kill? Anyway, you can't kill less than 36 Dao integration stage experts. And you have to at least cripple a grand shaman, right? That situation could be imagined with just a little imagination. When that happened, the Flood Witch's state of mind would be more than just sour. It would be natural for her to break down. Great, the Flood Witch would be ashamed and angry. It wouldn't be impossible for her to kill herself. Just based on this consideration, the Alliance would definitely not break the rules of the token of gratitude. The Flood Witch was the Alliance's biggest pillar. He couldn't afford to lose face. He couldn't afford to lose face. Even if he wanted to do something, he definitely couldn't do it in the Alliance's territory. He could go to the Astral Souls to assassinate her. That way, he could find all kinds of reasons to shirk responsibility. But if it really happened in the Alliance's territory, then don't think about it. Previously, the Tao League sent a fairy to deal with Swordsmanship, but Swordsmanship was still alive. The Flood Witch went to the Tao League's territory and killed a heavenly king with 2 strikes of her hammer. And now, it was still Swordsmanship who would dare to act rashly. Try to act rashly? Everyone in the Alliance knew this very well. No matter how ashamed and angry they were, they could only allow Swordsmanship to taunt them. They couldn't do anything, and they didn't dare to act rashly. On the mountaintop, Swordsmanship laughed. Ha 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 ha. Then he suddenly somersaulted and fell straight down. He crashed through the clouds in the sky and disappeared below. Everyone could hear the continuous rumbling and the sounds of battle. Swordsmanship descended at an extremely fast speed. High up in the sky, all the fairy realm Tao integration experts frowned. They really shouldn't have come. They came. Were they just here to be bullied? But if they didn't see this little bastard being torn to pieces and beaten to death, they wouldn't be satisfied. The next moment the countless experts in the sky were suddenly thrown into disarray by the wind. Where was Swordsmanship? Why did Swordsmanship's life aura suddenly disappear without a trace? Why was there no sign of life left? He jumped down in such a grand and heroic manner. How did he disappear just like that? What's going on now? One of the Alliance Tao integration experts looked at the others in astonishment. Seems like it. Another person also had an indescribable toothache. That bastard acted like he was the best, then jumped down and fled. This was simply Chapter 970. That kind of heroic spirit, that kind of heroic spirit, that kind of fighting spirit. Was it just for show? To pave the way? But how did that kind of emotion come about? His state of mind doesn't match at all. Fuck. Numerous experts of the Wizard Alliance cursed in unison in the sky, expressing everyone's thoughts at the moment. What the hell is this? Lei Changtian was still hiding in the dark. He didn't say anything. He didn't feel angry that these Alliance fighters were cursing at his grandson. In fact, he even had a faint feeling that these guys had helped him speak his mind. Because Lei Changtian, old demon tears, also wanted to curse in his heart. Fuck. What the hell is this? What kind of parents could give birth to such a despicable son? No, my daughter has inherited my genes. She can't be like this. It must be Zhuo Changchang's fault. He must have passed on some bad genes to his daughter. Just now, Shuo Duo's arrogant and overbearing attitude was insufferably arrogant, but he was very clear in his heart. Although those guys up there wouldn't really come down to deal with him, they would try their best to locate him. They would stare at him, as if they didn't want to die. In other words, he had thousands of accurate radars on his head at all times. They could locate his current position and share it with everyone around him. Everyone in the Alliance. What the fuck? How could he feel good? Therefore, after his heroic act just now, he jumped down without saying a word. He could create a huge momentum of death, as well as a commotion. Then, he imitated his own momentum with a stream of elemental energy, and rolled down the mountain, with a big rock. With a swoosh, he entered the space exterminating pagoda. Well, go and chase after me. I need to take a rest. That act of showing off just now has used up all my strength and courage. I need to save my energy and recharge my energy. Then, I'll go and fight with you guys again. In any case, I've just broken through to the royal god reigning realm. So I need to consolidate my current realm. I won't accompany you any longer. The group of Tao integration stage and Skysoar realm experts in the sky rushed to the foot of the mountain in disbelief. They searched everywhere with their divine senses. And after a long while, they confirmed that there was really nothing left. However, everyone who came to this conclusion couldn't help but look at each other. Where did that kid go? No idea. Could it be that this brat has a void transformation stone with him? Someone guessed. That makes sense. Immediately, many people seemed to have come to a sudden realization and agreed one after another. As Dao-fusing Soar realm experts, aside from being high-level cultivators, they were all experienced and knowledgeable people. Even if they hadn't seen some things with their own eyes, they would still have heard of them. The current situation could only be explained by Zuo possessing a rare treasure, like the Void Transformation Stone. If that brat really has a Void Transformation Stone with him, then he has too many trump cards. How are we going to kill him? We'll be lucky if we don't get killed by him instead. Umno Alliance's peak stage Skysoar realm expert muttered. At this moment, other than feeling a hint of jealousy from that person's words, there was also a hint of fear. Among the experts present, which one of them hadn't been nurtured as a genius from a young age? But now, looking at Zuoxiao's equipment, they couldn't help but feel dejected and ashamed of their inferiority. When I was his age, I didn't have a single one of those things. Even now, I've already reached the Skysoar realm, but I still don't have a single one of those things. Look at the sword in his hand. I've been nurturing this sword with my soul for so many years. If it were to clash head-on with that brat's sword, it would probably turn into a sawtooth in an instant. Is the golden-scaled shaman's group here yet? Someone asked. That's right. Right now, only Sir Jin Lin's group. No Sir Lei Bao, Sir Shihai, Sir Ranju, and the others with special cultivation techniques can restrain Zuoxiao's abilities. But I don't know if they're here yet. Just another 300 li, and we'll reach Lone Bamboo City. One of the experts said worriedly. I'm guessing that Zuoxiao's next goal is to enter Lone Bamboo City. No matter how much loot we get from the battle, when it comes to supplies, entering the city is still the most convenient. As long as we enter the city, we won't have to search on our own, and we won't have to worry about being schemed against. After all, it's still a city. We can't use a city as the price to cut off Zuoxiao's supplies. That's right. Let's see what happens next. If you have any ideas, you can inform us at any time. We're just passing on information, and it won't count as us doing anything. You don't have to tell me that. I'm thinking, but other than personally killing him, what else can we do? Pig brain. You've thought of something. Let's go to Lone Bamboo City. Zuoxiao left a long time ago. What if he didn't leave? You're such a retard. What else can you do besides retard? What if he really didn't leave? If he didn't leave, would he stay here and retire? You're such a retard. Who are you talking about? Don't go. Tell me, who are you calling a retard? Who's the retard? Stop right there. Tell me clearly. How am I a retard? A large group of people walked towards Lone Bamboo City. In the middle of the crowd, there was a retard's voice. After walking for a few hundred li, he still didn't give up. How am I a retard? What did I retard? You're playing dead. Tell me, retard. What's wrong with being a retard? Did I eat your rice? High up in the sky, a faintly discernible cloud floated back and forth. Previously, when so many people gathered here, they still didn't notice the presence of this person above them. Moreover, it had indeed confirmed the saying that there was always someone better than you, and there was always someone better than you. Lei Changtian. Of course, Grandpa didn't leave. He was a shrewd man. How could he not see that those who could pose a threat to his grandson were those people? After following Zuoxiao for such a long time, Lei Zhangtian had already understood that this little bastard had never left after witnessing Zuoxiao's mysterious disappearance several times. He was just hiding for the time being. Although he still didn't know what method that kid used, it didn't stop him from coming to the conclusion that he hadn't left yet. Sure enough, by the time the sky turned dark, there were countless groups of people in the sky. They were all rushing towards Lone Bamboo City. The sky was completely dark. On the half-destroyed Lone Bamboo Mountain, there were only a few sighs and sobs from the UMNO Alliance soldiers. There was also the sound of chanting. Other than that, there was no other sound. Then near the foot of the mountain, Zhou Xiaoduo's aura appeared in a faintly discernible but real manner. Although this aura was faint and almost undetectable, it was enough for Lei Changtian, who had been carefully searching for traces of Zhou Xiaoduo. This kid had actually used some unknown method to conceal more than 99% of his aura. He had even changed his appearance and dressing up like this and that. This was the conclusion that Lei Changtian came to when he used his divine sense to take a look. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, 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 cough. When the old man glanced over, he choked on the wind in the air and coughed non-stop. Tears almost came out of his eyes. This kid is too fucking talented. Because what was reflected in the old man's divine sense was a stunning beauty. The beauty that appeared was tall and slender. She was about 7,576 meters tall. She had willowy eyebrows, cherry lips, an oval face, and pink skin. Her lips were red without any lipstick, and her eyebrows were black without any makeup. She was indescribably beautiful. Her eyes were like ripples in the autumn water. Her body was like a willow tree swaying in the breeze. Her chest was high, her waist was slender, and her buttocks were round. She had a pair of straight, pink, and slender legs. Everything was so harmonious and pleasing to the eye. Her white clothes and her hair were like clouds and waterfalls. It hung down to her slender waist. She was too beautiful, too beautiful. There were no more ornaments on the beauty's head. There was only a simple purple jade hairpin. She gently tied up her hair. She looked very casual. She held the lady's sword in her hand and wore snow-white boots made of demon beast skin. As she walked, her elegant fragrance drifted with the wind. It made people feel more relaxed and happy. Only her face was covered with a layer of iciness like an iceberg, adding to the feeling of being isolated from the world, like a winter plum blossom. Such a beauty could only be admired from afar. She was not to be touched, that the beauty showed off all the way. She did not hide her tracks at all. She leisurely walked towards Lone Bamboo City. She walked in the sky openly. Her light purple ribbons trailed behind her slim body. She flew more than 100 feet. She was like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Along the way, countless experts of the Wizard Alliance were dumbfounded. Who is that in front? So beautiful. Such a flirtatious aura. Slurp. Oh, I'm drunk. I feel like I'm in love. Bang. If you want to fly, then fly. Why did you bump into me? Don't you have eyes? The person who was scolded stared blankly. He did not care about being scolded. He looked in that direction and said, "So beautiful." Whoosh! A group of people came from afar. There were about 60 to 70 of them. They saw this beautiful woman from afar. Seeing such a beauty in front of them, they all had the same empathy. They all ran as fast as they could to catch up. Looking at the beautiful Zhua, who was flying leisurely in front of them, a young man who was leading the group shouted anxiously, Miss, please wait. Miss, please wait. I am the Thundercat of the Lei family. It is my honor to see you today. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.